Apologies. We are happy to move the apologies for Deputy Mayor Cashmore for absence on council business and Councillors Casey Fletcher and Quacks for absence and Councillor Daniel Newman for lateness on council business. So, have a seconder. Councillor Hills. Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Declaration of interest. We have two people declaring making a declaration, which is Mayor Goff and Councillor John Walker, in items 5.1 and item 10, so hence why we had to wait to get a quorum of 13, not 11, because two people will leave the room. So that is noted. Confirmation of the minutes. Could someone please move? Councillor Simpson, seconded. Councillor Darby. No alterations. All those in favour?
Aye.
There are no petitions. Public input, we have two on public input, and welcome Penny.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, what I'm raising this morning is just continuing to try and make sure there is no stone left unturned in terms of trying to ensure that Auckland Council and council-controlled organisations comply with their statutory duties arising from the Public Records Act. And following what I think was a very good meeting with the Auckland Council Strategic Procurement Committee, which just deals with contracts that are awarded by Auckland Council. I'm now here at the Finance and Performance Committee meeting, and your terms of reference, as you know, your responsibilities. The purpose of the committee is to control and review expenditure across the Auckland Council group to improve value for money. B, monitor the overall financial management and performance of the council parent organisation and the Auckland Council group. So now that the child, Auckland Transport, of the Auckland parent is now, as you know, providing devilish details of contracts awarded which are valued at less than $50,000, which means that all contracts awarded by Auckland Council, the details are now available for public scrutiny. As I said at the Strategic Procurement Committee meeting, it's now time, not just that Auckland Council caught up, but all the other CCOs caught up as well. So what I'm here to do today is to give it another chug along, and what I'm formally requesting is that all CCOs provide the same details of awarded contracts as do Auckland Transport. And what I wish to have attached to the minutes, I just printed off today, the first page of awarded contracts from Auckland Transport, which is the evidence that proves that contracts worth less than $50,000 are now being published. The thing that I'm still very deeply concerned about is that the area of subcontracted contracts, that is not yet included with Auckland Transport or Auckland Council or any of the CCOs, and what the unprecedented bribery and corruption case in the Auckland High Court proved was that effectively you have two layers of corruption. One is public to private, where the corrupt public official gives a very big contract to a private contractor. Then you have private to private corruption, where backhanders are exchanged in order for subcontracts to be awarded, and there is no place for either of those things, particularly in New Zealand, perceived to be the least corrupt country in the world. And to fix this, we need to make sure that the same level of scrutiny is applied to subcontracts. The other thing I'm deeply concerned about is the collaborative model for contracting, which the High Court case showed effectively was the basis for the corrupt model, where you didn't seem to have any boundaries, lines, or clear guidelines between public and private, and public officials and private contractors were partnering together, and it just seemed to be compasses of any sort, moral or otherwise, just completely vanished out the window. And what concerns me is with Auckland Council CCO governance manual, that a lot is made of that collaborative model. And I've printed off a couple of key pages from that, and I think that also must be reviewed. The collaborative model must be reviewed. Must. Because the proven corruption risk, we have the evidence for that. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I believe that precedent is the most powerful argument. Good enough for Auckland Transport, good enough for Auckland Council and Council CCOs, but it needs to be extended to subcontracts, and also, as I say, the collaborative model needs to be looked at. And the last point I'd like to remind councillors of is that the Public Records Act has been the law since 2005. It is now 2017. That the Office of the Auditor General came out with guidelines for procurement in 2008. It's now 2017. But the Office of the Auditor General guidelines were very clear about the requirement of councils to comply with the law, and the Public Records Act 2005 was specifically mentioned. In my considered opinion, as an anti-corruption campaigner, I believe that those Office of the Auditor General guidelines have not been effectively enforced by anybody, apart from a persistent pain-in-the-neck citizen who is going nowhere until the law is complied with. So on that cheery note, councillors, I'll leave it there.
Perfect, Penny. Right, questions? Great. Councillor Sayers.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Thank you, Penny, for coming along and reinforcing your message to us. At a personal level, Penny, I don't have any issues at all with what you're trying to achieve, and I'm very pleased that Auckland Transport have done what they have done. So, what it does in my mind is it just minimises any potential misperception by the public around the activities of Auckland Council and the group. So greater transparency equals, I guess, greater confidence in Auckland Council, and we're trying to increase our confidence and trust ratings with the ratepayers and residents of Auckland. So my question might be through you, Mr. Chair, is if we wanted to, I guess, encourage this or expand it within Auckland Council and perhaps across the CCOs, Ross, how would we go about that, I guess?
Come back to you, Councillor Sayers, because you're here to ask
Sure.
the presenter questions, not me.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, one point that I didn't emphasise, which I should have, arising from the unprecedented bribery and corruption case involving Auckland Transport, what came out loud and clear there, which horrified me, was the fact that a so-called public official could simultaneously be a private consultant. In fact, the bribes, that's where they were channelled through, the private consultancy firm of Murray John Noon, who's now serving 5 years in jail. And what I want to know is where is the corruption risk of public officials simultaneously holding private sector businesses or consultancies, and when is that going to be looked at, and how on earth can that be ethical, proper, lawful, or anything? Make your choice. You're either a public official or you're a private business person. You can't be both at the same time, because guess what happens? Corruption. Thanks.
Potentially corruption. Councillor Philippine.
Thank you, Chair. Look, my question is based on your comment to Councillor Sayers, and when is the opportunity, or when can we ask questions around what happens post this? Because my question is not to Penny. There was a comment that, and the reason I asked this particular question, Chair, is because of the presence of Penny at the strategic procurement meeting that we had earlier this month, and there's a report coming through, and there were some comments raised there, especially in support and the advocacy that Penny has from Councillor Hulse. So I just wanted to sort of make sure that there's no duplication anywhere, that we are working together. So when can I at least comment on that?
Thank you. Through the Chair, Councillor, I would suggest, and Councillor Sayers as well, so you're talking similarly, that your opportunity for that is that we do have the quarterly reports from the CCOs. Now, obviously, we do have that on Friday, however, that's retrospective, so I would suggest the opportunity to do that is the next quarterly reporting to the Finance and Performance Committee of the CCOs, which you should expect to be probably this month was late. It should actually be in July.
And just through you, Chair, supplementary, because at the strategic and procurement, and I've spoken to the Chair in regards to the deputation from Penny, that there was a report called for at the strategic procurement. So I just want to make sure we're not sort of working in isolation of each other. And this is the reason why I've asked it, because there is a report and there was one asked for at the strategic procurement. So, I mean, I just want to make sure that, you know, there's not another one here, which is really dealing with the same issue that Penny, and I know that Councillor Holtz mentioned at that particular committee and thanked Penny, Ms. Bright, for her advocacy, you know, and continued advocacy in regards to it. So that's all. I just want to see any duplication, that's all.
So through the Chair, if I may just to address that point, Councillor, the report that will be going to the Strategic Procurement Committee can then be referred to this committee for noting, so that there is no duplication. It is one report that is then addressed to the wider audience.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And also the lead staff member at the Procurement Committee reports to Sue as well.
Thank you.
So. Right. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
So we will move a recommendation. I'm happy to do that. Receive the presentation from Penny Bright and thank her for her attendance. Seconded by Councillor Sayers. All those in favour?
Aye.
Right, we now have the Second Nature Charitable Trust, Sir Noel Robinson and Richard Jeffries, and anyone else that is from your committee, Richard? Just the two of you?
All our trustees.
Please bring them, please come up. If you could then introduce your team.
Well, thank you very much for seeing, excuse me, just one sec. I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much for seeing us today. I would like to acknowledge the apologies from our trustees who aren't here today. Our Deputy Chairman, John Bongard, is overseas. Karen Avery, Ted Nataki and Terry Spragg. I also would like to acknowledge the trustees are here. Next to me is Mike Hutchinson. Luke Patterson is down at the far end. Hamish Crooks and Maureen Shadbrock. And of course Richard Jeffrey, our Chief Executive. I'd like to, the only comment, Richard will give a presentation which we're really appreciative to be able to pass this on to you today. But I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the trustees who work an incredible number of hours, no payment, no funding at all. They're doing it out of the community good for the people of the South, and tens of thousands of hours have been put in over the years by these trustees, and I would like to acknowledge that. So without any further ado, I'll hand you over to Richard.
Thank you, Noel. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity this morning. I've put together a presentation. I'll try and get through it quite quickly because there's about 18 years of history to get through. Does this work? So probably if we start with the land where the Trust's activities are based, you'll see there an old photo with the boundary around it, and that was land that was gifted to the Trust, the proceeds by Manukau City Council, and that's just to put it into context, the site, and then this is what we've created so far today, being the Vodafone Event Centre and then the Vector Wirral Whitewater Park. Back in 1988, Manukau City Council first purchased the site for $3 million for the purpose of housing a civic facility of some type. What they wanted at that stage they didn't know, but they wanted to secure the site as a strategic land parcel. During 1988 to 1998, over 20 projects were proposed for the site, but nothing ever got off the ground. There were things like ski fields, golf courses, Polynesian villages. The last one that got close to having any legs was, I think, Roger Douglas's Superdome, and that one fell over. Then it came up with Auckland Regional Council, wanted to look at a proposal for Mount Smart Stadium for an indoor arena. Auckland City Council wanted to do the same, and so did Manukau City Council. Sensibly, they appointed the Hillary Commission at the time, Sir Wilson Winere, to adjudicate and look at which proposal would be best, and cutting forward to the future, that was basically Vector Arena. So Sir Barry Curtis, as Mayor of Manukau, approached Sir Noel and a lot of other community stakeholders and formed a group, a working party from within the community called the Pacific Steering Group. That was formed in 1999. That group then, independently of council, went out and got pledges for $300,000 to then start the feasibility work on looking at building a stadium. So in 99, KPMG basically finished a proposal for a stadium. The business plan around that was then put together. Manukau City Council then gave conditional support to the trust to be formed, that it would give the proceeds of the land in its totality to the trust, and the trust would then work out what part it wanted to keep for developing the venues. It did, though, request that a performing arts theatre be put into the project. So then the steering group, along with council, formed the county's Manukau Pacific Trust. So that was our name. We have changed in more recent years to Second Nature Charitable Trust to align with our objectives. The trust was formed in July, and then the first thing that the trust did was revise the business plan to include the theatre, and by doing that basically made the stadium proposal redundant. As I think Sir Noel always said, we're a little bit long in stadia, so we wanted to actually concentrate on a facility that was of relevance to our own community as a sub-regional facility. We completed the design, funding, the resource consents, and exhausted all the funding avenues. We couldn't reach our target of $49 million. So we went back to council and said, what do you want to do? Council approved an additional grant to us from, we were very lucky that year, there was a capital dividend from the airport shares that the council held, and part of that was allocated to us as $9 million. Also, the operating grant for running the project, and an overdraft guarantee of $7 million, which was fully repaid. In 2003, we then negotiated a fixed lump sum contract with Mainzeal as the lead contractor for the project. We were then also, during the project, approached by Deputy Mayor Ann Candy to look at installing the Pokapua as another major project, which, if you've been to the venue, it's like our Statue of Liberty. It's the world's largest totem. And we raised an additional $1 million independently of council to complete that wonderful project. In total, by February 2005, we'd secured funding for $49 million, which included council's land sale and also the grant to basically pay for all the bills. And pleased to say that back in 2005, I don't know if you all recall, but in 2004, 2005, New Zealand experienced the greatest escalation in construction costs via steel, aggregate and labour, and we still managed to deliver the project on time and within budget. And really the proof in the pudding for the venue, as it's referred to in our community, as the town hall. We've had over 40 million people attend since our opening, and we host over 250 events a year. So in the context of what is the facility, for those that haven't been, it's really like a Bruce Mason Centre and a North Shore Event Centre, but under one piece of infrastructure. I've got a very quick video here, just 3 minutes. Forgive the quality because it is quite an old one, but it just runs through, for those that may have not been to the facility, the project.
From the Genesis Theatre, Telstra Clear Pacific in Monaco. It's time to sing like a superstar.
Hold your event in 2005.
Telstra Clear Pacific Event Centre.
A home for business, arts, sports and leisure in Manukau City. A 3,000-seat indoor arena and a 700-seat theatre. Banqueting from 20 to 1,500 in a stunning architectural environment with no traffic hassles and ample car parking.
Telstra Clear Pacific Event Centre. Showcasing excellence.
Call 0508 for events.
This year, Manukau celebrates 40, and this time now is right to open this magnificent facility. And everyone that's been through this place, people have rung me up, sent me letters, and they are absolutely delighted. They're full of admiration for the vision of the Trust, the vision of myself and the Manukau City Council for getting the job done.
We gave them, I think, 12 different options, from a 60,000-seat football stadium to just a conference centre, exhibition centre or theatre or indoor sports arena or exhibition space. We gave them all the different combinations, and we spent a lot of money getting this detailed research, and the research came out as basically what we've got here today.
Because it's just of its innovation, and it's different, and it's got a neat theme behind it, and that which connects to people and cultures, and it's just a good space to have out here in Manukau. Yeah, it's like our own little Aotea centre.
Once you're here and you're sitting inside the venue and you look along the row or you look across the other side of the arena and you see someone you know, it's someone you know you're part of the community.
So Sir Barry still lives on. So that was basically where we got to, opened in 2005, and then during a period of time we had the rest of the site that we converted from Business 5 to Reserve to protect the future opportunity to develop the full site to create a critical mass. So the vision for the Trust was, for the second stage, was to create a destination of international significance while being of relevance for our local community. And so we went through a lot of different design, feasibility processes, and the project that ticked all the boxes then became known as our Wirral project, which is now Victor Wirral. So with that, we then approached Council via Regional Facilities Auckland as our interface with Council to resell the land that we originally sold back in 2002 to contribute towards the project, which was successful and contributed $20 million towards the $45 million that we needed. So in addition to that, we've fully raised $25 million through various philanthropic means and grants from government, etc. And we delivered on time and on budget the first stage, which was the Convention Centre extension, which is the outrigger for the Vodafone Event Centre, in January last year. And then shortly after, opened the Victor Wirral Whitewater Park. That opened in April 2016. And then just more recently, we've just opened, the Prime Minister opened in February, the Momentum Hub, which is a cluster of charities that we give free rent and utilities to that are focused in the youth development space and can leverage off the Whitewater Park. The aforementioned now audited figures that returns well over $1 million of community good each year into the community via mainly our schools programs. We've been running schools programs for actually since 2004, before we even opened the venue, as that's one of our big focus areas. So there's a shot that shows the total project and it's complete. You'll see up here is the Momentum Hub, the latest part of the project, for those on that side. The conference centre there, and then the water park as such. Two rivers, the Tamariki River through here for our schools programs, and then the larger river for corporate team building, the Olympic team, international events, and whitewater rescue training facilities as well. I'll just play a very quick video here that just that Lotteries produced, which explains the project.
Hear that? That's the sound of water rushing past at 11,000 litres per second. I'm here at Victor Wera Whitewater Park in Manukau, and I'm going to tackle these rapids. I'm in safe hands. This is Ian Ferguson, former Olympic gold medalist, my childhood hero, and he runs the place.
Victor Wera is the best artificial course on the planet, designed for recreation as well as top kayakers.
You have tested it all right?
We have totally tested it, and you're safe.
Here goes nothing. That was incredible. You're going to come try it out. Who's this place for?
Olympic athletes, clay boaters, rafters, to families, everybody really. It's free to come in and just wander around, just come to enjoy it. One day we're definitely going to have Olympic champions bred here.
How did it go?
Oh, it was really good.
It was real fun just getting thrashed around.
It was amazing. What a rush.
Here in South Auckland, we've got this world-class man-made river, and you, the lotto players, have helped make it happen. So good on you.
So basically, in regards to the question was asked about our performance, our accounts are audited every year independently. They're available for the public. We have an open door. If anyone ever wants to come through them in detail, I'm more than happy to assist. But basically, we're financially self-sustainable, and we've created an asset pool replacement value of well over $170 million into a community that would have never seen such an asset base for civic use. We take all operating risk on everything we do, running the facilities, our operating expenses, capital, maintenance, sinking fund for long-term maintenance. So, for example, when we had to repaint the exterior of the event centre after 10 years, that was a huge cost, but we didn't have to ask anyone for money because we had a sinking fund where we'd accumulated that $300,000 to be able to do that. Council contribution, which is greatly appreciated via regional facilities, is $365,000 per annum. It used to be $385,000, and that's slowly reducing down. We break even every year on an operating basis and our sinking fund, etc., and while still delivering our targets of over $1 million into the community each year. So we basically operate as a social enterprise. 65% of our business is community, which is a very, very wide range, and then the other 35% of activity basically pays the bills. And we run both facilities. In total, we employ 14 full-time staff, so it's very mean and lean. Just by way of benchmarking, as a percentage of expenditure covered by council via RFA, if you've got, look there, the North Shore Event Centre, 20% of their expenditure is covered by council. Ours is 6%. Trust Stadium is about 13%, and then Auckland, regional facilities, Auckland's venues, as within their own cluster, 39% of their revenue is generated via council. This is the hub. So there we've created 6 offices where we've got various charities based there for free, and we've got 2 classrooms, one with the Panasonic Theatre and then the other, the Whitewater Rescue Centre. And so we have various community groups have free use of those as well, and schools. We're putting through, usually every day we're putting 100 school kids through our training, whitewater safety, how to react and such like in water and use the facility, which we subsidise that and also sponsor it for free for our local schools. We've also just got High Performance Sport New Zealand now based there. Luca Jones winning a silver medal was one of the best things that ever happened at the Olympics for us, because it's sort of propelled that side of what the facility can be used for. I'll just play a quick video here of our schools program. This is just one sample of what we do. So we'll bring the kids in, they get kitted up to learn what a life jacket is and the importance of it, then look at the river and learn about the flow and the float position of how to stay upright and let the current carry you until you're in safety, which is the same in the ocean if you're in a rip. And then we lower the river and practice river crossing, so they learn that although it's shallow water, it is still very dangerous because of the current that it takes. And then after that, they then do team building with rafting. And so last year we had just over 6,000 kids come through this program, and we've fully supported all of that as well as the other activity we do in the event centre. So schools programs isn't a new thing to us, as I touched on earlier. In our first year in 2004, before we opened the facility, we got sponsorship to build a classroom on site for the children to come in and learn about stormwater retention through our environmental stormwater ponds, etc. And 3,000 that year. We've now grown that to 32,000, and we hope to, over the next 5 years, increase that number up to 45,000. There should be circulated in front of you, it's just come out last week, as our annual report, which is, we report on our community good across all aspects of what we do. So I think hopefully that gives you an overview, and if you want any more details in any areas or any other questions and answers, more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, very good. Right, councillors, if you wanted to have the presentation to learn more about the trust, that's fairly comprehensive. Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, thank you. Just going over the history, one part of the history that I don't think you did actually mention, and that was back in 2009, and that's when the High Court ruled that the land next to the Telstra Pacific Event Centre, if it's sold, the proceeds would go back to the Manukau City, which is now the Auckland Council, would go back to the ratepayers. And there was a High Court ruling that the net proceeds from another sale or any sale of land would go back to the council, and it wouldn't go back to the trust, because the trust over the years has actually, we've sold the land a few times, and the trust has actually got money from it, and so the decision was made very clear that the council retained the net proceeds from any sale of the land. So in 2009, the land value was around about 30 to 40 million, and so probably in my time of being a councillor on the Manukau City Council, it was probably one of the most discussed things in our community, and certainly didn't have a lot of support from a lot of the people in the communities. And so I just wondered.
Just how it.
So no, I've asked the question. I said that they hadn't discussed the 2009, because there has been a lot of history, and I'm and I'm sure you're aware that the Manukau Council had to spend over $300,000 taking you to the High Court to get that ruling that any sale of that land would actually come back to the people now of Auckland.
So through the chair, what is the question though, please?
Well, the question is that, is there anything further you want to tell us about the history? Because you've been telling us some of the history, but there's been parts of the history.
Yeah, no, and that I'm more than happy. There's heaps of history on the project. You know, the trust has been around for about 17 years. So if we go back to the very first slide where I showed you the land, so basically the idea was that the land would be gifted to the trust through taxation reasons. The land had to be sold first and then the proceeds of the land given to the trust. The trust ran that process all the way through. When we sold the land, we looked at other examples around the country of projects where land had been sold to fund the other projects, and unfortunately the developers just sat on the land and did nothing and land banked it. So when we sold it to Eldermoss Group, which was the warehouse, we put a clause in the contract that if they did not develop it as they promised within 5 years, we had the right of purchasing it back at the current, at the original sale price, not the valuation, and that way it would give some urgency. They'd never developed it. We asked council to exercise that right. We had to ask council twice in Manukau to exercise that right of buyback, and they finally did. Then the land sat there. We lined up IKEA to purchase that land for $40 million, and unfortunately the GFC hit the same week that the contract was to be signed, and IKEA pulled out. This has always been a project in partnership with council. We then had the land there sitting there doing nothing. It was in council's ownership then. We asked council, can we please now look at what we sell it for to fund the project? Change of mayor, change of political scene. The council new CEO said, no, we need to go through a process. And we said, well, what is that process? He said, you need to get a judicial review done. So at council officers' instruction, we reluctantly said, yes, we'll do that. We employed Paul Kavanagh QC for the sum of about $28,000 that we spent to present our case. Council, we don't have any control over your expenditure, but you're exactly right. The administration spent $300,000 and let a lawyer, in my view, just go wild on it and bill council hugely. And then Judge Cooper's decision, you're correct, Councillor Stewart, was that the proceeds, his exact decision was the proceeds do not, council has no obligation to give the proceeds of the land sale to the trust, but it does, as the trust has a express interest in the land, whatever occurs on that site, the trust have to approve. Okay, so that's exactly where it left. And then the Super City came about. We then went through all due process with council. The land was transferred into Regional Facilities Auckland, not into Auckland Property or into Auckland Parks, because of the express nature of the relationship we had with the land because of Judge Cooper's decision. And we went through an open and transparent process, again quite controversial, in regards to getting that land sold, which we did in partnership with the Auckland Property, Regional Facilities and ourselves. That's the history of the land sale.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and trustees, and Richard, thank you. I'm not as familiar as some of the other councils about what you do, and it's very great to have that background. Thank you. My question in a finance meeting is not unusually for finance questions. So I'm very interested that you're reducing your council funding, or you have reduced your council funding, and you're looking at a model that has potentially 35% paying for 65% of the community good. My question to you is, do you see yourself as being completely sustainable without any council funding long term?
Yes, that's our aim, and it's in our trust deed as well to be financially self-sufficient. And so this is why the hotel's critical for us, because we believe that will give us an advantage in the marketplace for that other 35% to increase that to 40%, being conferences, which deliver a higher yield because the conferences require accommodation on site or adjacent. So that is our aim within the next 5 years, is to be totally self-sufficient.
Very good, thank you very much.
Councillor Watson.
Thanks. No, just a question about the Whitewater Park and particularly the schools programs you go. Is I know it mentions here it's fully or partially given sponsorships. Just two questions really. One, are the programs like one day in, one day out, or are they ongoing? And two, what does partially or fully sponsored mean in terms of the price? Obviously,
Yep,
fully means
sure.
it's free, but what's the partial component?
Yeah, so we have three different main core programs. So that was one that you saw. So it's $45 to do a program. $42 to do a program. If a school approaches us, we'll then subsidise half of that for them. So it'll be costing the school about $21 or $22. If it's some of our local schools in our immediate area, because remember, and that's any school throughout the whole of New Zealand will do that. But our trust deed still pertains to our community of interest is Counties Manukau. And so if there are low decile schools within Counties Manukau, we will then subsidise that fully, so it's free. And so of that 6,000 students, approximately 2,500 were free and the balance subsidised.
Okay, thanks.
And and again, all of our, it's a yield model. We can't give it away until we make it. And so, it's always that tension of controlling the yield of our overall operation.
And just one follow-up, do you get many schools coming from other parts of Auckland to use it?
48% of our schools come from Counties Manukau and the rest from all over Auckland. And that's also the same with our arts school program. Our schools, the only thing that stops us doing more in the school space is resource. I mean, especially in the Te Reo space, anything we do there is fully subscribed within an hour of it going out on the email.
Thanks.
Right, we have two more questions. Member Kaki.
Kia ora Richard, kia ora Sir Noel, and Hamish, good to see you again. I just want to acknowledge a couple of things first, then I'll ask the question. So first of all, just want to acknowledge the business development that we've seen. I've grown up around this facility, lived in Papakura and further south, and just the opportunities that I guess through Richard and his team, the development, the construction of the site, going to local businesses, I think is some of that in-kind contribution that goes largely unrecognised. I know of a engineering company that really did well through a contract providing the steel there. And, so it's a lot of that stuff, I guess, people think that because they're in business they're making heaps of money, but it's actually not always the case. But it was through the centre that gave it that I guess, that little nudge to get ahead. And now that's a really, really thriving local company still in Manukau. So just want to acknowledge that. And also on the people development side, I saw Rose Matawhao's first public appearance at the centre, and she just got the Billy T Yellow Towel Award last week. So she's come a long way. But again, the new beginnings that came out of the opportunities that this venue provided to our locals who are now international kind of stars. So those are my two acknowledgements. But my question really is, Richard, your organisation, the trust, your organisation used to have a really good relationship with Tainui. What's the situation today?
Yeah, probably, if I could just wind back, because that's a question that goes into governance, actually. And so going back to the Pacific Steering Group, and I think this is something as an outsider coming into Manukau over 16 years ago, the relationship that Manukau Council had with its own community, whether it be Pacific community, Chinese community, and iwi, was very, very strong. And so when we had that steering group, all of those stakeholders were involved in the process. And so when we set up the trust, we looked at different governance models for the trustee. So our trustees are appointed through an electoral college system, which was a system based on Infrastructure Auckland. So the appointees to our board, regional facilities now have the ability to appoint two. Counties Manukau Sport have one, EMA have one, and in relation to your question, Tainui Waka have one as well. So Julie Wade's our current representative, and so our relationship is very, very strong. It's family, it's whānau, it's all, you know, we all work together. And then the representative that Tainui have appointed, Tainui Waka, as we are the tail of the waka, where we are, is Tētana Taki. And it is the theme of the venue, the whole theme of Maui, the legend of Maui is in our architecture. It's Maui's waka. The white water course symbolises the hook of Maui fishing. And every kid and every corporate that comes into our facility, they are played in our theatre before they go on the water, a safety video, and then a 3-minute digital animation of the legend of Maui. And Wero is all about the challenging our kids to actually get out from behind their devices, take a risk, enjoy adrenaline generated in the right ways, and accept that challenge. So putting down that Wero, and that comes through in that film. So it's part of our DNA, yeah.
Councillor Filipano, you?
No,
okay?
I'm fine. John,
Right.
Councillor Watson asked the questions I wanted answered.
Thank you, that's been very good.
If I could just,
yes,
just
Sir
say
Noel.
one thing, Mr Chairman. I think the thing for me and the trustees, which is the overwhelming thing, is the smile and the joy on the kids' faces after going through one of the programs at either the event centre or Wero. And you come away so sort of proud and pleased to be associated with these kids from all different walks of life. And that's what it's all about. And so we're investing, as Richard said, over between 30 to 40,000 kids a year come through this program, whatever it might be. It could be in the arts, it could be water safety or what. And it's a real privilege to be part of seeing these kids grow up and enjoy the advantages of having this in South Auckland. So on behalf of all the trustees and the people of South Auckland, we really appreciate the support that all you've given us, because without that support, we wouldn't be able to do this for the children of South Auckland in particular. So thank you.
Well, just in driving your percentage of community access down a little bit, be aware that we want to keep it up at about 60%, because that's the key of just what Sir Noel said. So be aware, because it's no different than the Trust Stadium out west, where we want that community access about 60-65%. So. Thank you very much. Councillor Simpson, would you like to move? And Councillor Filipano? Oh, actually, I'm going to ask Councillor Filipano and Councillor Collins to move in second. Thank you very much. All those in favour?
Aye.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr Chair, might I say something before Mike Hutchison,
Yes,
as a trustee, just in passing. This city, I believe, has got a huge debt to Sir Noel and to Richard Jeffrey in particular. Richard is a project manager, driving the project right from the word go to come in on time and on budget, and within a few years being both debt-free and no cost to the council. And Sir Noel's own philanthropy and underwriting it, I think, is just extraordinary. And it's a real pleasure to serve on that particular trust. My 9-year term's up in September, and I'll be really sad to go. So thank you for that.
Thank you,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Right, next to steal the show is the Faux Local Board Chairperson, Tracy Mulholland. Welcome, Tracy. I believe there's a lot of questions for you afterwards.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and thank you for your confidence in me and our board.
In the photo, you have to put your hair back, Tracy, slightly.
Sorry. Right, so kia ora, Morena, and yes, I am. Oh, it's dreadful, isn't it? I'm not very good at posing. Tracy Mulholland, Chair of the Faux Local Board, and it is a real pleasure to be here. I know a lot of you, and I know you're very familiar with our board, and I always welcome you, so I wanted to say that initially. You're always welcome in the Faux. So, governing body members and to the meeting, I'm talking to item 9, disposals recommendation report. I have some points. I understand I have 5 minutes. I have some points here and I'm willing to hand over my notes as part of it if required. So we're talking about New Lynn for some time, and I would say from my involvement for 24 years, having been involved with the shopping centre and redevelopment sector, AMP actually it was in Lynmore, that I'm fairly familiar with it alongside a lot of people that have worked in the community tirelessly for this transit-oriented development project. So in saying that, it's approximately 24 years plus in the making. So developments in the since the adoption of the original plan around the site have included a number of significant items, and they are the relocation of the RSA, the creation of the square and Memorial Drive, the replacement of the bus terminal and rail station, demolition of community-built library and community centre and replacements, and they have strengthened the town centre alongside the redevelopment of the Lynmore property and other small surrounding businesses. And of course we're all familiar with the fact that Evander is on site, which is great because it's approximately 2,000 people which will be homes. So that's really good news for us and our community and how the transit oriented development project has worked. So our local board is keen that the Panuku Development Auckland Council report be accepted, and that we do support the transit-oriented development outcome, which was for integrated use, so housing, retail, commercial development. We do need this housing, and we know that New Lynn is set for that because it was actually set up to do this work from the old Waitakere days, and I must also declare that I did work for Waitakere City Council in relationship management at the time on the project. So we are keen that we can consider and support this project to support essentially the transit centre that we have there and to progress this. Now what we're also asking for is you consider this with urgency, and you recommend that to Panuku. We do understand from the history of this that Infratil did have a development agreement, and I know for those of you that are familiar with that, you will give that due consideration, that there is documentation which has been outlined in the Panuku report. So Totara, for the area and why that urgency, around the site there are some boarded up shops, and there has been, as if you're familiar with it, some development. There's housing on top of the transit centre, and where the buses come in, the terminal, there is also private investment in there. So we really do want to encourage a move away and to go to that next stage of a TOD development. So it was in conjunction with NZTA, central government, local government. We had a whole lot of parties involved in this pretty exciting project, and we do want to move forward. There are some, as every community is faced with some issues of safety and needing to redevelopment, and I must say it is notwithstanding the fact that we do appreciate this is, I appreciate from our board's perspective, this is on our doorstep, and we are very fortunate to have such a significant town centre regeneration project. So there is a high need to reach the outcomes that were outlined in the 2010-2030 urban plan, and that's very specific around significant outcomes for the whole area, which actually goes as far as consideration to Avondale and how that links up as well. So it's very good thinking on behalf of a significant team, and I do want to acknowledge Tim, who did wonderful work and now apparently, does work for Panuku, I believe. So we're very fortunate to have excellence in urban design and development. Our board and the community have high expectations for the site to contribute to a way of living in Auckland. So when I talk with you, I would like to think that you also see me as a board chair who considers the whole of Auckland
because this is about all of us. And I know, and you know, that we, of course, have a strong connection to our local community, but we must also, as chairs, think of the bigger picture for our community, so the whole of Auckland. So in that way, we believe that this type of development can contribute to the wonderful live, work, play we have in Auckland, or the environment we possibly have that can be generated in New Lynn. Supported, actually, it's already started. So the public transit centre is spectacular. We know about that. It is being used. We do have development there. There are homes there. There are the new 2,000 homes that are being built under Avanda. So we see this as the future. And although I may not be able to, at the age of 51, be able to talk about all the amazing things that are going to happen in our future, and I really wish I knew, but I can tell you this is the way of moving forward, the way that it's been constructed in terms of the homes, the live, work, play, the restaurants, the nighttime economy, the supporting the other communities that we have close by. So we really endorse the approach that Panuku are taking, and I do want to acknowledge the team at Panuku. They were very patient with us. I want to be very clear on page 19 of item 9, attachment B. Our board has certain expectations of how we work in the community and how we respond to our people, and that is considered approaches to development. And I am a fan of this type of approach where we have great development, but alongside that we also consider what our community need. Public facilities, green space, live, work, play, verandas, so that when you're walking down the development area to go out for dinner at night, that you don't freeze to death because there are no verandas or areas. So we were very firm around things like how do we work with other partners, police and so forth. So I do want to bring that to your attention, that we would request you consider that in your decision making, and we do acknowledge that Panuku did guarantee to me at workshops that they would work collaboratively like that, considering those approaches in development, because there is a bigger picture, and a lot of us who have been involved with these types of projects, especially a TOD, because it was new to Auckland at the time, so a transit-oriented development, that we must consider all of those approaches by social and development. So we require that the buildings contribute to the public realm. And public arts, let's not forget that, is very critical, a part of who we are. I also believe that we do have a strong obligation, I have raised this recently, with regards to how do we embrace our treaty obligations in this, and I've also raised this matter. That's critical to me as a local board chair in my relationship with Mana Whenua. And I worked in Manukau City Council as well. You'll think I've had a career just working for councils, but I have been in the public sector, private sector as well. Now, one of the things that I am very proud of too, of working with the Manukau City Council at the time, when the PO that has just been referred to with the previous speakers was installed, it is absolutely stunning. It is a centrepiece. And so what do we do in places like New Lynn for development here to respect the treaty and our obligations there? So I want to bring that to your attention. So parking is another issue, and I think that goes without saying. We must consider the fact that the previous council did unfortunately shift away from parking. People do still park here. NZTA have made the statement themselves. For 33 years, people are going to be using their cars. And I do admit I have a gas guzzler. People have raised that before. Yes, I will go electric at some stage. So I think for our community too, we need to be across this, and that parking is a critical issue for us, and we do have a right to be able to support those, or people have rights to be able to be supported in terms of that live, work, play environment. And if we want to generate good business and good outcomes for our whole community, they need to be able to park as well as use public transport, and that should be promoted. So this was one of the first long-term plans in terms of a transit-oriented development, that it is proving its worthiness. We have had reports go to government with regards to the NZTA funding and central government support of the project to indicate clearly this is working. We do need to move it instead of talk, so I'm very pleased that Panuku have made this approach to us, and notwithstanding the fact that we did ask for aspects outlined already to be included in their consideration. So we believe that it will confirm what the urban plan and council require for a TOD area. Now, I do hasten to add, and this is a new way of working And when I say new, in the last 15 years or so. So we support PPPs. I've been involved in a number of PPPs myself, having worked for AMP and been involved with the Todd project alongside a number of other partners. It was hard to get off the ground, but it can work. And I do understand the considerations this governing body has to make with regards to how does that work. And as raised by a councillor with me, when he questioned Tracy, how does that work for budgets? What are you going to do in the future? What happens if funds are required to support a toilet and a green space and so forth? Well, I can assure you our board will be very supportive through LDI. Well, I can say that. That's not saying what will happen in 2.5 years, but we will be supportive to ensure that we do have that infrastructure in place and that our LDI is considered, I should note considered.
I have to wrap up, Tracy.
Thank you. So I am actually on my last point here. It is a regenerating town centre. It is connected to, close to Avondale where work is underway. We do support the recommendation that is outlined here with the considerations of the FO board input. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. Very good. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Tracy. And look, a great set of resolutions from your board. I suppose I'm looking at the recommendations we've been asked to pass, and I will talk to Panuku when the item is brought up. But my question to you is, have you had discussions with Panuku around your terms that you mentioned in your resolutions?
Thank you for your question. Yes, there have been discussions. Let me assure you that it was in brief at a workshop. I have been guaranteed alongside my board that Panuku will take those items extremely seriously and that they will consider them. So it was passed on that understanding. Thank you for the question.
Happy to remove the receipt of
presentation. Moved and seconded. Thank you very much, Tracy. All those in
Thanks, sir.
favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. Please stay for the item. Right. Extraordinary business, there is none. Notice of motion, there is none. And the disposals recommendation report. Letitia, Anthony. And Mike.
Yes, just by way of introduction to Letitia's right, we have Mike Bush, Development Manager, and on Mike's right, we've got Adam Sadgrove from the Development team. Mike and Adam have played a key part in those discussions with the FO Local Board.
Letitia, Anthony, who's...
Yes, after that wonderful introduction by Tracy, it's a bit of an anticlimax now. The property presented in this report, Areas C and D 3 Memorial Drive, is subject to a legacy joint development agreement between Auckland Council and Infratil Infrastructure Property Limited. That joint development agreement gives Infratil first rights to develop the site once Council releases it from service. Panuku is still undertaking the rationalisation process for the subject area to enable that joint development agreement with Infratil to proceed. The internal consultation undertaken in December last year for the subject site hasn't identified any alternate uses, and no issues are raised by any Council's internal departments or other CCOs. Engagement with the FO Local Board has taken place through 3 workshop discussions we've had, involving Mike, Adam, and also Tim, who Tracy mentioned from Panuku's design team. At the March meeting, the FO Local Board endorsed the proposed disposal of the subject site, subject to expectations that Panuku ensure good urban design outcomes. I could elaborate on those more. I think Tracy spoke very well to them. The rest of the resolutions, as you're aware, are in attachment B to the report. Mana whenua engagement undertaken did not highlight any any specific cultural significance issues, and there was no commercial interest registered by iwi. Should the committee approve the divestment, Panuku will undertake a disposals process which is in accordance with the existing joint development agreement and provides an optimal return to council. Any questions?
Anthony, you've Infratil shown interest in picking up these properties?
Yes, I'll just defer to Adam and Mike for those questions.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We've been in constant discussion with them probably for the last 6 to 8 months, looking at various iterations in terms of the development of those sites. It hasn't been straightforward. We've had to deal with certain historic buildings on the site as well, and those discussions are ongoing.
And I've added another resolution. Do you have any problems with any of the resolutions, the recommendations that from the Whai Local Board?
Ross, no, they're fine. No issues at all.
Yeah, that's good. That's what I was going to say.
All right. Well, that's it. Well,
I'm happy to move that.
I'm happy to
Oh, you
move
move it.
this,
I'll
and
second.
Councillor Cooper was wanting to second. So no further discussion on this. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour? Against? Right, good. Excellent. There you are. Clean.
Thank you.
Easy. Right, Letitia.
Thank you,
And we've
Mr.
got the conflict
Chair.
of interest of Councillor Walker and the Mayor, so I'll leave the room for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just introduce Marion Webb, Manager Portfolio Strategy at Panuku, and Corey Barkle from Council Legal Services. The report in front of you today is the follow-up report from one that was before this committee 2 months ago regarding the proposed reserve revocation and disposal of part of 770R Great South Road. Now, the committee decided at that time for the final decision regarding the reserve revocation to come back to this committee following the close of the public consultation. I can confirm that the public consultation regarding the reserve revocation has been undertaken. It is now closed. No objections were received. Following the decision of this committee, we will then be able to proceed with the next steps of the reserve revocation, which is going to the Department of Conservation. Happy to take any questions, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Mr. Chair, look, I'm sorry late this morning because I would have liked to have been there for the presentation from the Second Nature Charitable Trust. Mr. Chair, this piece of land should never have been reserved land in the first place, actually, and whilst I'm not happy with what comes after that, that's a whole different matter. You have to accept that the item in relation to this is about a revocation, which is a technical matter. And so I'm actually going to move this recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Have a seconder? Councillor Filipano?
We're doing questions?
Yep, still in question, but that's okay.
I have no questions.
Right. We can mix it up. Do you have a question, Councillor Simpson?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to ask you, under in your executive summary on item 5, what are the appropriate delegations for the land sale, i.e. who gets input into that?
Through you, Chair, the delegation sits with the Panuku Development Auckland Board, and the board will approve any recommendation in terms of the sale for Panuku staff. So in terms of input, it is officer input to the Panuku Development Auckland Board.
Okay. Is there any input from the local board or anybody else?
No.
Right. My second question is, I kind of get why we're doing this, and the point that I made in the public forum asking the trust was that we're doing this so that they can do the hotel, so potentially they can be self-funding. Correct? Am I on the right page? So I suppose, is Panuku going to sell to Second Nature, and then is Second Nature going to sell to Safari, or are you going to sell directly to Safari? How does that work? Is that able to be discussed now? Because it's all part of the same discussion from my...
Through the Chair, Second Nature has entered into a sale and purchase agreement, development agreement with Safari Group, one of its group entities, and Council will be selling to Second Nature, and it'll pass through within the same transaction through to the Safari Group entity.
Right.
So technically we are selling to Second Nature and Second Nature's selling on.
Right. Is there any way to put in here somehow? Because again, the flowchart, I mean, I'm not disputing the flowchart, but the intent from my perspective is to, if we do this, they have the hotel, then they become self-funding. Is there any way to somehow build that self-funding aspect into the reason that we're doing this in the first place?
Well, this report is only about the revocation. Of the
But this is
reserves.
the only input that we have.
Well, we've had input and we have already moved resolutions in our March meeting, pretty well covering everything. And this was just to go through the last bit of transparency.
I know what you're trying to do, you can't.
Well, I'm just, you know, that's the purpose. I mean, I was very pleased to hear that the trust is willing, that's what they want to do it for. So the reason we're reversing the reserve status is that so that they can become self-funding, and I'm just wondering why we can't add that. That's a positive message. Why we can't add that to the resolution?
Recommitting the March item.
So remember to revoke reserve status
reason.
and it's
Yeah.
merely so they can then move it on. It's as simple as that.
So that they can move it on, so that they can be self-funding.
And
Isn't it a
that's
bit of
what
flow
this
chart?
report's about. Well, that's one of the objectives of the trust, there's no question about that, but this is only to revoke the reserve status.
Yep.
I'm sure we will get some further reports back in time by the Second Nature Trust as to their progress, because we all have a deep interest in it. So.
Yeah, I just don't understand why you're not trying to be positive and say the reason we're doing this is so that they can be self-funding.
We are being positive. This has been a very positive meeting, and we've
There's
got a
no-
mover and a seconder, and it's all moving on
question,
nicely.
very good question.
Councillor Darby.
Thank you. Just can you just refresh my memory or our memories? The intention was, and the notification says that it's the intention is to dispose for a purpose, and the purpose is hotel and service departments. Did we have service departments confirmed when we last discussed this, or was it just a hotel?
Through the chair, yes.
It was, okay. Thank you. I'm aware that if that's our intention, we would be wanting to follow through on that intention in the future negotiations, correct?
Correct.
Is Panuku aware that there is a large parcel of land of 8,000 metres alongside this parcel that has been marketed for hotel as well?
Through you, Chair, yes, we are aware of that.
So in your negotiations, you would be keeping an eye on what might be unfolding on that site as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Walker, Wayne Walker.
Sure, just got a couple of questions. First off, just around the disposal. Given that it's a reserve, do we have to provide any substitute area as reserve because we're selling this effectively through the Reserves Act?
Through the Chair, the Reserves Act 1977 specifies that the proceeds of sale from any reserve go into Council's reserves accounts for the maintenance of existing reserves or the acquisition of future reserves. Now, on top of the mandate to do that that's set out in the Reserves Act, there's also the resolution from last year regarding Transform Manukau, that the funds in the Manukau area be ring-fenced within there. So, on that basis, the proceeds of sale from this that Council receives will be ring-fenced in the Manukau area towards reserves in that area.
Okay, so that's all right. And the other question I've got just goes to value, and that's value to Panuku as the seller. So does the use that the land is going to be put around the hotels and the apartments factor into the price that we get for it?
Through the Chair, yes it does. This land will be based on the value once the value of the land once the reserve status has been lifted, not the current value of the land while it's currently subject to the Reserves Act.
And does it take into account what's proposed to be put on it? That's the hotel and the apartments.
Through the Chair, yes.
Councillor Watson.
Yeah, just a question of semantics, I think, probably, but just point number 6, am I right in assuming that notification in the paper, that constitutes public consultation then, in terms of the briefs under which you operate?
Through the Chair, yes it does, and that's also in accordance with the requirements of the Department of Conservation as set out in the Reserves Act. Adjoining landowners are also contacted as well, but in this instance, the Second Nature Charitable Trust is the adjoining landowner, so consultation wasn't undertaken with them.
Are they supportive?
Member Hernani.
Who revokes reserve status?
Through the Chair, the Minister of Conservation, ultimately.
Does that have to be by an Act of Parliament or just a Gazette notice?
Gazette notice. Yep.
It's not actually an Act of Parliament. The delegation or the authority sits with the Minister.
Lies with the Minister.
Sorry?
Lies with the Minister.
Lies with the Minister, and it's recorded by way of gazetting.
Cool.
All right. Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question's just probably wanting to gain some confidence around the question that was raised by Councillor Sharon Stewart earlier that got answered by the Trust. I don't fully understand the background of it, but I'm hoping that perhaps Panuku understood the gist of that question and that we feel very comfortable from a legal perspective.
Councillor Sayers, I'm just going to have to overrule you on that one. So this is about the revocation of the reserve status. Simple as that. But offline, you can get further explanation on that.
All right.
We'll make sure you do. Right, there are no more speakers. We have a mover and we have a seconder, so I'll put the resolution. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Right, excellent. Thank you, Letitia. Thank you, team.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, councillors.
Car park strategy. We have Richard and Don and John. Auckland Transport.
Morning. First of all, apologies, Dave Warburton couldn't be here today, and neither could Greg Edmonds, who heads the property section, and Andrew Allen, who looks after parking's on compassionate leave at the moment, so you've got me, I'm sorry.
Right.
With me I have John Strawbridge, who looks after parking in Auckland Transport, and Don Munro, who looks after strategic asset management.
So just be aware that we've put up another resolution just up there to cover Browns Bay and Baxter Street, Warkworth, so that will be follow-up resolution to effectively what is a report today. So is there anything?
I think maybe just a couple of introductory comments. I mean, the genesis of this was a request to look at our whole land holdings to see what could possibly be sold, if you like, or as surplus to requirements. Around the same time, 2015, we'd completed our parking strategy, which put a rationale around when we charge for parking and when it should be free, and a whole lot of other factors, park and rides and so forth. So the criteria in which we looked at our land holdings were around, they were based off the parking strategy, and they looked at factors like who gets the benefit from this, is there a shortage of parking in the area, how does it fit with public transport, park and rides and the lot. So this was one of 94 properties now that have been identified as not required for a transport purpose. The process for those is to go into council and then Panuku to look at whether there are alternative uses within the council, and then potentially to run through the disposal process with the local community. So far so good there. I think where this process has come apart, and I would say that with the other 94 properties there's potential for this current Browns Bay set of issues to be repeated again and again, I think in reality Auckland Transport should have fronted the local board on this and explained why we'd got to where we did. Unfortunately there was a bit of a hiccup in the process really, where the formal responsibility for consulting with the community rests with Panuku, but I think it's much more sensible to have us in the room at the same time, really.
So given that sort of little bit of tension there between AT and Panuku, do you feel as though you're on the same page better?
I think it'd be useful to
earlier
have guidance
consultation?
from the committee, but I don't think, generally we work very well together and so forth. This was the start of a process that's going to involve a lot of properties around Auckland, so I think some clarity from the council that that's the expectation would be useful.
Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just noticing the additional clause there to the resolution, including Baxter Street car park. I just wanted to gain clarification. It's saying to be measured against the policy 20, is it, of the Auckland Transport Parking Strategy? 2D, is it? Oh, thank you. And where the resolution that we passed, Mr Chair, was to try and identify within a 3-month period if we could find an alternative parking area with the same number of car parks or more. Does this I just would rather not see that overwritten in any way, whether it's complementary or not.
They'll be done together, because it's been 2 months since we passed that resolution, and there was a 3-month window, so this will be part of that.
Right. Could I just clarify, and there's kind of 2 answers to this question, that the Baxter Street Walkworth car park isn't an AT car park, it's an Auckland Council car park. Having said that, the whole point about this is that we all need to be working as one on this. So Auckland Transport's put, for safety reasons and for other common sense reasons, we've spent money on this car park ourselves. So let's not get into arguments about who owns it, but I would just say this isn't one of ours.
Just a supplementary there, Mr Chair, would be...
Sorry, Don, did you want to say something?
Oh no, just to confirm that, we operate that for the council, and we've maintained it, and but ultimately, we're challenged with the aspect of spending capital on an asset that's not ours.
Yep. Great. Sorry, Councillor Sayers.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Just if we could get perhaps a copy of that policy 2D. Just
it's on page 15.
Is it on
page 15 of, item 15 of attachment A to your report outlines the criteria.
There's a link. There's a link in
and there's a link to the parking strategy in the.
There. Okay.
Oh, he's got a hard copy. He hasn't got the
Yeah.
link.
Okay. Thank you.
Well,
thank
it'll be on his computer anyway.
Councillor Simpson.
No, I didn't have a question.
No, Councillor Watson.
No, thanks. I take the point here that you've just raised about AT being asked not to engage with local communities, and you feeling it subsequently, that's maybe not such a great idea. In light of the fact that the consultation, such as it is, we heard from the last item, can just amount to notification in the Herald, the back page of the Herald is somewhere. In instances of car parks which have a wider community use, I just wonder how satisfactory that is then as a form of consultation in the wider field, given that, as you're finding out, that car parks can attract a bit of emotion and concern from the community.
We always expected it would, and I don't think back page of the Herald is how local boards should find out about anything that we're up to, really. It's really a question about when we engage, so I can fully understand that nobody wanted us talking to the local boards about this or any of the other potential sites until the council had undertaken its own assessment of whether or not there are alternative uses. So there's a sensible process to be followed through, really, but it needs to remain sensible.
Mr Chair, I've got a few specific comments relating to the Anzac car park in Browns Bay. Do you want to finish with the questions first, or are you happy to incorporate comments?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just interested in your response to this, my commentary anyway, as it goes to the rationale for decision here. On the one hand, and this seems to be largely a rehash of this study or investigation, whatever it was, back in 2014-15 that was done here. I just would make the point that quite a bit has changed since those 2 years, not least of which is the unitary plan, but in this particular area, we have increasing intensification, we have a number of resource consents granted for apartment buildings, so a number of developments that's putting more people into Browns Bay. That would be the first point that I would make. Back in 2014-15, you do say in the report that the utilisation and occupancy of the facility was high. However, that was kind of dismissed in the same sentence, saying that you felt that a number of the people using it were going to this new world. In 2000, the new world only opened up midway through 2015. It wasn't open. That was a largely dormant building in 2014. I just wonder how you make that assessment over the period of a week, given that this car park is just a short stroll away from the main road and a slightly further away from the beach, and a beachfront that is always chock-a-block as far as public access goes. So I'm just trying to tease out, Mr. Chair, just really the basis on which that comment is made, given that Browns, for instance, were people down there on the weekend when Browns Bay is absolutely heaving, and the use there is not so much the new world, it's going to the shops and the main road and the beach.
Just, I mean, John or Don might want to comment, but certainly in the case of Browns Bay, the picture in front of you isn't the full picture of parking in Browns Bay, of course. There's reserve parking down by the beach that the council manages, which again is part of the need to keep all of this joined up. There's also quite a lot of private parking down there as well in the back, in the shops here between the fish and chip shop and the French cafe and the vegetable shop. So you did right. The only time that Browns Bay is really short of parking is on hot summer's days and the weekends when the beaches are packed. It's occasional. I understand the local board's point of view, but that's the debate exactly that we need to have.
So just by way of conclusion then, Mr. Chair, and I understand the position Auckland Transport have been put in here, and that's pretty clear from the introductory comments, but in a situation post-unitary plan, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering how valid that original dictate from the Mayor actually is now, given that it's 2 years on, the unitary plan's in, we have a lot more people getting crammed into these areas, we have a lot more elderly people who are far less mobile, and we're proposing to sell off all across Auckland a number of the car parks that I suggest that these people often rely on. I think there's an illogic there that is going to become increasingly apparent, and with all due respect, I think the local boards are picking up on that more so than the governing body, I think.
Nick off.
Perhaps I can
Yes, Don. Yep.
just talk to that a little bit. The Auckland Transport's strategy with parking is that its primary focus is on servicing the short-term parking, which is around ensuring the economic viability of the centre. With regard to the unitary plan changes that have come about for residential, the expectation is the market will provide what the market needs for residential parking. There's not an obligation on the council to step in to provide, or Auckland Transport to step in to provide for that. So if parking is required for residential, the expectation is that the market will provide for it. And that was the consideration in the unitary plan deliberations.
Yep.
I'm happy to move the receipt of the report of the strategy, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry?
If you to move the recommendations.
Just the A.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I had the call from Mr. Chairman, I think.
Yep, no, but I'm asking for a seconder because it has been asked. Councillor Walker will second.
No, not this council.
John Walker, Councillor John Walker. Okay.
They're all the same.
Yeah. Just a clarification on para 12. Para 12, you point out that the car park is primarily servicing customers and staff of the adjacent New World supermarket.
I suppose the first question is, I presume that you can back that up. It's research-based, so it's reliable information. But secondly, if that is correct, has there been any interest shown by New World in purchasing the car park for the use of its own staff and customers?
Through the Chair and Your Worship, I've got updated statistics, including occupancy right through that area in the whole of Browns Bay, which I'll make available to the committee. I only received these this morning as of November 16, so it's far more current. And in terms of the second part of your question, that would be a matter that only Panuku would be able to answer for us today, whether New World. There we go.
I've just had it whispered in my ear that the answer was yes.
Okay, so let's just clarify that point, that New World has indicated an interest in buying the car park. So the question before the council is not whether it's still used for car parking, but whether we own it to provide free car parking to New World, its staff and its customers. I think that sheds a different light on what our discussion has been.
And through the Chair, absolutely, and through that process, if we do retain it, we pay all the OPEX.
Yeah.
Councillor Darby.
Thank you. Just on the reds up there, I have a couple of questions. Richard and John and Don, thank you. Paragraph 16, you stand by AT's recommendation is to divest. And so my key question here is, in arriving at that decision to support divestment, I would assume that you've assessed it against the criteria in your own strategy, which is 2D. You've done that?
Yes, correct.
So I was
Mr.
only
Chair,
moving A.
if that is done, I do not see the point of putting up the B. We're at risk of going around in circles here.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, I was moving A because I wasn't sure whether B was some sort of amendment or your own addition.
I mean, my own view on this, and I think I speak for Auckland Transport, is that it's all very well for us to assess it against a set of criteria, but I do think the community has to have a say before it's simply put on the block, really.
I agree.
Yes. So if that's the case, if that's the Chief Financial Officer's recommendation, I don't think it's a question of redoing 2D. But mind you, 2D, Mr. Chair, is for 2 sites.
Yeah.
So we just need to take that into account. But maybe the resolution or the motion needs to reflect the Chief Financial Officer's expressed view that there needs to be community engagement, not the redoing of 2D on the part of Auckland Transport.
Can I just clarify, we've done it for Browns Bay. I'm not sure we've done the 2D assessment for the Baxter Street Walkworth.
Okay, can we get these motions right then?
Yep, we've got several more people there, so in the meantime, Councillor Wayne Walker.
Well, who's writing the resolution?
So
at the moment, we have a mover and a seconder for A only, so we will look at what we're going to do with B and if we need another C.
So just got a few questions. What sort of facilities do we have in the Browns Bay area to cater for the sort of car-based and cycle-based services that we see in many overseas cities around car-sharing schemes, cities operating car hire, bicycle hire, particularly now around e-bikes, e-cars and so on. So what locations do we have in Browns Bay for that into the future?
There's nothing at the moment, although the redevelopment of the promenade area is very cycle-centric. In terms of a shared car service, that's a commercially driven operation that would need someone the likes of City Hop to come forward and request space there via our traffic control committee to resolve a car park for that.
Okay, so coming back to my question, and that's around how many spaces we would forecast out for those sorts of schemes that operate increasingly successfully in other cities and make a significant contribution to freeing up road space and the like. And I note that other cities provide public spaces for those enterprises, which are often done in partnership with the city because they perform a public good.
Yep, so that's exactly what we do in terms of the current relationships we have with these businesses. In terms of Browns Bay, we've had no approaches yet for that sort of service.
I don't think it's in the local board strategy at this stage, is it really? And there's no plan to put park and rides there. I think you're talking to us on Friday about the quarterly report, and you'll see in there that we are about to launch ride sharing. We've done a soft launch of ride sharing over the last while. But
So I guess, going back to my question, I mean, is there any planning, is there any forecasting, is there any requirement for spaces? If there hasn't been any planning done for this kind of facility in this area, just say so.
So what John has said is that we're reliant on a commercial partner to approach us to do that, and until such time as we have an approach, we haven't done any planning to make an allowance for this sort of thing. But it's not beyond the realms of possibility for us to reallocate spaces to such an operation.
Sure.
I think the answer is no.
Okay, and that's all I'm after, and that's what I understand. When I look at existing and future populations and employment growth in the catchment, I'm assuming that those existing and future populations take into account the intensification in the unity plan.
Yes,
Okay, and I'm assuming that you're also taking into account what we actually see happening in the marketplace, which is that apartments and so on aren't providing for adequate parking because it costs them a lot of money. That's what the marketplace does. The developers don't want to put in parking, and it would appear are increasingly reliant on street parking and the like. Are you taking that into account in Browns Bay in terms of your projections?
So that's an emerging feature, but the intention of the unitary plan regulations was that it allowed the market to determine the parking requirement, and the market is in the best place to determine what apartments will sell with or without car parking.
Sure.
And then if there is an overspill effect, we will manage that through the tools that we have in terms of parking enforcement and the likes on the street.
And just on the unitary plan, my understanding is that this particular part of the unitary plan is under challenge, substantial challenge. Is that the case?
It is under appeal on the basis of the exclusion of parking minimums for retail facilities.
Sure. Okay. That's probably enough for me at this point, and I'll reserve my right to speak later. Chair.
Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Chair. I guess it's a bit of, I don't know why that's happening. It's more of a comment, but it's either a yes or a no, I guess. But I think what's not included in this item is the fact that during the time between the study and now, actually below that blue box is all a new car park outside in front of the New World. So this was done before that large car park below the blue was actually in place. So that's been in place for the New World, and my partner's family lived just up the road, and I know that other car park I just assumed was part of the New World car park too. I didn't really, but yeah. So just to let the other councillors know that whole car park below it is a brand new car park with a whole lot more spaces across the road from a whole nother supermarket with a whole another few hundred car parks as well.
And the answer is yes.
Yes.
Councillor Lee. Councillor Lee, Mike Lee. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, this is the second time we have discussed this car park, and it looks like we're going to be discussing it for a third time. In their worst moments, the honourable architects of the Super City did not envisage, I am sure, that the governing body of the Auckland Council and senior executives of at least one CCO and another, probably less senior members of another, sitting around discussing the disposal of one car park in Browns Bay. That is properly the business of a local board. I think if people realise how much money was being wasted on this, I think they'd be truly appalled. This is not leadership, and this is not acting as a super city.
actually agree with that.
Councillor Sayers.
Here, here.
Probably just picking up on Councillor Lee's point there, if just noting mooting of C up there, Mr. Chair, if that does go forward, I think the Rodney Local Board should be included in the consultations around Baxter Street if we're going to do it with the hibiscus around Anzac Avenue.
Councillor Wayne Walker again.
Sure, so I'd like to speak to the motion. I'm opposed to the sale of the car park at Browns Bay at this time. I think it's a very short-term response, and I can only say from what I see happening in my ward, there is an unmitigated disaster rolling out around parking. I'll repeat that, an unmitigated disaster around parking. If you look at areas of intensification, and I'm certainly familiar with what's happening in Albany, we've got massive apartment development, nowhere near enough off-street parking in those apartments, nowhere near enough parking for businesses, so businesses are closing. They are shutting facilities. The Ministry of Justice in Albany, which had a service centre for people in the Albany area, had to close that facility because people couldn't find a location to park. There is presently a disjunct, a mismatch between parking and public transport availability. The public transport availability as an alternative simply is not there. I'll repeat that. It is not there. So we're taking short-term responses when the alternatives are not in place. I would suggest that if a study was done in Browns Bay and you look at the massive intensification that's happening there, which I'm well familiar with, and the parking that those people in those apartments and their visitors are going to require, you'll find that we're just not going to cut it unless this aspect of the unitary plan is rolled back, because it simply doesn't work. If you look at the catchment of Browns Bay, you've got hills all around, and people drive down to Browns Bay to do their shopping. It's pretty difficult for them to cycle up and walk up from Browns Bay, I can tell you.
It's dangerous.
And there aren't any local shuttle buses or anything like that, particularly for older people, and there are a lot of older people in the catchment of Browns Bay. So I'm afraid that this sort of sale just doesn't add up. It impacts on the lifeblood of businesses, and I'm not talking about the big New Worlds and the like that have their own car parks, but the other businesses, and there are lots of them in that area. And then the other thing that you have in Browns Bay, and I don't mean to go on, is it's a wonderful beach. So lots of people, lots of families want to go to the beach, and they occupy all of the beachfront area and further back. So I'm opposed to this for very good reason, and I would suggest that the local board is on side. They're opposed to this, and this is going to come back and haunt us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Darby.
Thank you. Look, support the motions as they've been modified, and thanks, Chair, for tidying those up. And also, I want to reiterate, following up on my question, the Chief Financial Officer said that AT had undertaken Policy 2D, which is the assessment for divestment. And while we hear a lot of anecdotal, it's not the job of AT to just rely on anecdotal. They've undertaken a proper assessment against 9 criteria, and one of those criteria is taking into account the unitary plan provisions, etc., area plans, all of that. So they have put it through those 9 lenses, and they still come up with the answer. I think we have to rely upon that thorough process having been undertaken. We can't keep asking for more of this. Otherwise it does go round in circles, and we do consume a lot of time here, as Councillor Lee is pointing out. The reason it is here, it's not because it's a car park, it's because it's a divestment, and that divestment has to come through this committee. That's the job of this committee. Whether it be a small parcel or a large parcel. It still has to be socialised through this committee and committed to by this committee. So that is why it is here. But I would hope that we do not keep running around in circles on this one. It should have been resolved a little bit more simply, but I am entirely satisfied that the 9 criteria under 2D have been satisfied for the Anzac site, not referring to the Walkworth site.
Thank you, Councillor Darby. Councillor Hoss.
Thank you. I find myself in total agreement with Councillor Lee. I'm kind of amazed that we could spend so much time on this. So I've got a question and a comment. My question is, if we're going to move forward, why are we going back to consult with the local boards? It's completely beyond me. I think we need to be going back to the local boards and saying we're either going to accept the step change in the city with regard to public transport and development of a compact city, or you're going to hold us back. I don't think it's consultation with the local board. I think it's a serious discussion around get a grip and move on. The Henderson Massey local board have completely understood what's required of the new city, and I take my hat off to them. These boards are just not prepared to engage in the discussion, and I'm a little bit confused. Mr. Chair, Councillor Wayne Walker has been our champion for carbon reduction, for sustainability, climate change mitigation, all of those issues, and is now advocating for the retention of at-grade car parking. If we're not prepared to make that step change and start
Can
investing...
I respond, Mr. Chair?
No,
at the
I
appropriate
don't.
time?
A point of order isn't when you disagree with someone. A point of order, I have the right to say what I've said. I'm simply stating the fact. The issue at hand is how do we fund the requirements for investment in public transport infrastructure and in infrastructure that's going to serve a compact city, and unless we're able to engage in these disposals, we're not going to move forward. So my question is, Mr. Chair, why are we going round the loop again? Is that what those recommendations are suggesting to us? Because to what end? I think we're going to come to the same conclusion, and although I'm probably a bit frustrated with those local boards, I don't believe in leading them down a garden path on a useless piece of consultation where we're going to come up with the same conclusion. So I'll support A, and I would have been quite happy for us just to move on. I don't think we should be engaging in empty conversations when we've got no intention of changing our mind.
Did you want to comment further? No?
I'm not sure really. I think there's two approaches here. You do a desk-based exercise and do the analysis and come up with an answer and then move along with it, or you have some local democracy where the local board gets a chance to have their view on whatever the desktop exercise is. And I mean, those two views are well expressed here today, and we're looking for some clarity as to which of those should be done. I think the current process around the Browns Bay site was unsatisfactory. I think the Browns Bay folk felt disempowered by not having the opportunity to have their say, and I understand that, and I do think Auckland Transport should have been there to front that discussion really and explain exactly why we got to the conclusion we did. But the ultimate call on this comes from you guys.
Yep. Okay. Councillor Kirby, you're the mover. Are you still only wanting to move A? And
that's what I wanted to discuss. I mean, for me, yes. Normally we go to the local boards first, but these haven't been to the local board at all.
No, and again, the rationale was
that... So that's fine. So normally we do go to the local boards, but I'm aligned with Councillor Hulse. Look, the thing is, if it's only going to come back that they say, no, we don't want to, then we come back here again and then we go, no. So it is a bit of a futile exercise sometimes. We have a direction to dispose of things that we don't need anymore because we are making huge cuts into the budgets. We need that money. So I feel a little bit, I think it is important that they have a say. It's been a bit backward just because it's a different process and it's not AT's fault. It's just, everybody assumed they were AT car parks, they're not. And
okay,
so they've come to us. So for me, I will support those two, adding those two, but I do have my reservations about, this whole process of going to the local boards all the time and then in the end, we either say no.
Councillor Walker, are you happy to all three resolutions? Sir John? you're happy to second all three? Yep. Okay, right, there are no more speakers, so I'm going to put the resolution. Sorry, councillor Sayers.
I was just, I wondered if Councillor Cooper wanted to include the Rodney Local Board in that consultation, because they're obviously part of that loop, and they're just not mentioned in C.
No, that's part of B anyway. That will occur as part of B anyways.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't say that. That's not clear to me,
Have
Mr.
to say
Chair.
that.
That's what
because it's
2D
implied.
Well, then why do you have C?
Exactly.
If you're going to have C, you need to include the Rodney Local Board for equality.
Because the 2D analysis has been done for Browns Bay. Okay. So
Well,
basically,
C, with all due respect, Mr. Chair, it says
Greg, you've got earlier
Baxter Street.
resolutions from 2 months ago that are still live as well about.
Yeah, I know,
about
but this is a
Warkworth.
new one, Mr. Chair. I don't
Okay,
understand.
we'll put up an amendment, councillor Sayers.
Well, I'm just asking Linda if she wants to
Well, can
do
I
it.
just be clarified? So in the 2D process, will the local board be consulted?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
So it's
you.
already in there. So no, I'm not prepared to put anything extra unless councillor Sayers wants.
You still want
pretty
C-
clear.
so
It's
do you-
very
I have
clear.
not had any signal of any further amendments, so I'm going to put these
Oh, well,
resolutions
yes, I'll put
A,
the
B and
amendment
C.
forward. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Chair. I'll put D.
That will be as a further amendment. If you've got a seconder to have an amendment
I'll second that.
to this.
We've got a seconder.
We just heard that it's inferred.
Yeah.
It's implied and included, councillor Sayers.
So is this going to tie up 2 CCOs for 2 small car parks? This is just crazy.
No, it's just getting ridiculous. So
Just put it through.
Okay, I'm going to vote. I'm going to move. So we've got a seconder for D, do we?
Yeah.
Councillor Watson. Okay, right. Well, I'm going to do. So we'll put that up. So D is going to be done separately, and it's going to be moved by councillor Sayers, second by councillor Watson. So I'm going to put A, B, and C. All those in favour?
Aye.
And D, I'm taking as part of that
Hang on.
substantial.
You didn't ask for against. I'm against. I'll have my vote.
All those against?
Yep. Record.
Record Watson and Walker? Yep.
Yes, please.
Wayne Walker, okay.
Don't
Right.
consult with the board.
You don't need to put it in there.
No.
Okay, so it's not D, but, okay, there is D, and it's not been put as an amendment, it's been put out as another motion, but moved by two.
No, I
So
wasn't
all
against.
those in favour
So
of,
for which
this is D,
really good.
it's moved by councillor Sayers and seconded by councillor Watson.
Rodney's consulted.
Right. So remember, staff advice has been that it is implied in B anyway, but if you want to have this as a extra banquet,
Yeah.
so I'm going to.
Mr. Chair, sorry.
should D be Baxter
Yes.
Street,
Yes.
not
That's what I was saying.
Browns Bay?
Yeah, got that wrong. Okay,
Well, and you should take out hibiscus and bays out of that one as well.
right, so this is another resolution on top of B which covers it, so I'll just remind people of that. All those in favour of this?
Aye.
Against?
No.
No. I'll take the noes, have it, I'm afraid.
I'd better call for a division on that, Ross.
Too
It sounded that way to
Too
me.
late, the division's over. Okay, right, we're moving on to the next item. Unlock Henderson. Thank you, Chris. Team?
You should be asking for, yes, you could call for a division anytime.
I think the noise from the eyes was louder than the nose.
I've got my hearing aid and I don't hear that.
Pretty close.
That is very close.
So when you contest the vote, so he was just.
Patricia Marion again.
You can ask.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unlock Henderson, this is a procedural report to approve the disposal of the properties that were set out in the Unlock Henderson High-Level Project Plan, which was endorsed by the Planning Committee on 2 May.
Yeah, I'm happy to move with the addition, I think maybe councillor House might have spoken to you,
Coming.
of, it's not clear to me that that's financial
It is.
contribution, and I want to really lock that down.
You can't lock that down until Panuku come back to us, which they're going to in the next 2 months, about how we're going to deal with land of all the unlock categories. And we will then make a formal vote on that, a la we've done for
I'm not
Onehunga and Manukau.
sorry, I'm not clear what you're saying, because that was the point of it, but I'm not saying particular numbers, but that there will be a financial contribution of some kind. I don't want to lock down that number because we don't know what that is. but that it's not just, oh, well, in kind, we'll help you plan something. That's what I'm talking about. But I mean, if that's not possible, then we need to be told. But that wasn't clear to us in the planning meeting when this was all basically the same resolutions were passed at the planning committee. I thought that those were actually, that was implicit in the discussion and the presentation. So that's why I'm asking, Mr. Chairman, if that could be clarified.
I wasn't there for that, but Letitia, do you think it was implied or implicit in the presentation?
Through the chair, my understanding is the committee or the governing body still needs to make a decision about unlock locations and if the funds will be ring fenced. I know that was certainly the intention of the Henderson Massey Local Board and I think Panuku, that we'd like to see that happen, but a decision has to be made on the policy regarding unlock locations yet.
And that is coming with an initial paper within the next couple of months, but it's certainly part of the LTP, because when we're addressing full stop this whole issue of land sales and the difficulty we're going to have to meet those objectives. So, and I believe Panuku will be coming back with the recommendation that within the unlock category, that a similar optimisation policy be incorporated that has been done for Manukau and Onehunga being transformed. So,
Yeah.
Councillor Kirby.
Well, I suppose I just don't want this to get lost, Mr. Chairman. If the intention's there, I know from Panuku it was, and that's all the discussions that Councillor Hulse and I have had with the local ward and Panuku. I don't want it to be losing out on a technicality, because this town's actually dying if we don't do something. You know, it seriously is, and we're putting millions and millions of dollars into the Southern Initiative, Tamaki Transformation, and South Auckland, and quite rightly, councillors from Manukau, absolutely. No, but what I'm saying is, quite rightly, we should be doing that because it's an area of high need. But West Auckland is starting to fall over because we're concentrating on that area and not on basically the next most deprived area. And that's my biggest concern, Mr. Chairman, for the community there. So, you know, that's why I don't want it to, you know, on a technicality, because that word is not there, that we just go, oh, well.
Well, I have to
but
say...
I'll leave it to your discretion.
Yeah, it's not really a technicality.
I've said my piece.
I just say we just need to make the policy decision, but I can tell you now there'll be many councillors and local boards, many councillors here representing areas, other unlocked areas that will all have the same objective as what yourself and Councillor Hulse are trying to achieve with this wording. And as I say, I think if you'll see in Panuku nodding, they are going to come back to us with the recommendation that that's what we do for all of the unlocked categories. So, Councillor Hulse.
Thank you. I'm just supporting Councillor Cooper. We are... this is a bit of belts and braces. I mean, I understand the targets that we've given to Panuku to return via disposal, and you know, full marks to the Henderson Massey Local Board, who have grabbed the opportunity and have put up every last bit of land that they can possibly find for sale. Henderson Massey is walking lockstep with Panuku, and we are, you know, Councillor Cooper and I, as the local councillors, are passionate to see Henderson get out of the ground. Councillor Cooper's not exaggerating when she says that without a strong cash injection to get this off the ground, this will not happen.
And it's a metropolitan centre.
I have a fundamental concern about selling off land to simply get rates down. You know, we've made that political decision. It was not something I liked, but we're kind of stuck with it. But it seems to me bonkers to sell land and not return it to the local area, or some of it, a percentage of it, not all of it, but a percentage of it, to actually get this huge opportunity out of the ground. So, Mr. Chair, we hear what you say, and I know you are right, that this will come back to us to understand clearly how we're going to deal with the unlocked category, but I'm very reluctant to let go of signalling the wording without the clear uptake on the other side. It's a little bit of, I'm not going to let go and I want something to still hold on to. I won't use the expression in public, but I think you know what I'm saying. So there is, I'd like those words to stay in there. The intention is clear, and I think we need to stick with it.
We're happy with that wording.
So
No question
I'll
about
move that
so,
with that
Second,
wording.
thank you. And
Moved
just
and
noting it's a
seconded, but I'm just
metropolitan
gonna ask-
centre.
I'm just going to ask
It's not a...
Ms Tyndall just to reiterate some of the things I've been saying.
Thank you. Through the Chair, just to some of the points that have been raised this morning around disposal processes. We have, I initiated some discussion with Panuku in late April with respect to this, because obviously when things have been coming to committee, we've been ending up in quite significant discussion. As a result of that, we've agreement that we have a meeting on the 27th of June with Panuku Development Auckland and a number of stakeholders across the wider council family, involving council staff, staff from Auckland Transport, and also representatives from local board services. The objective of that meeting is to establish a clear process that can feed into the LTP on disposals, what needs to be considered, by whom, by when, including what the parameters are of the financial requirements, and that can include some of these unlocked collocations.
Councillor Darby.
Thank you. So yes, it was before Planning Committee, and at no time until at the end of the item, when I commended Shane Henderson as chair for offering up $26 million worth of land, which was quite considerable, at no time, other than in the written report, was there any mention about reinvestment in Henderson. It was mentioned in the written report because that was expressed by the board, but it wasn't conveyed orally at the time, and I made the point that that would be subject to future decisions based on the report that you've instructed, Mr. Chair, for this committee on the unlocked categories. So I want to probably reiterate some of the things I said in acknowledgement of the board's extremely bold move to offer $26 million worth of land. Clearly that board knows the desperation that there is in wanting to see, Henderson reignited, rebooted pretty quickly. And it's huge for a board to come forward as it did and without caveats just say, look, we need to deliver at pace in this area for a whole range of reasons. And I want us all to reflect on the willingness of that board and all its members, I believe unanimously, no dissent at all, not hanging their hat on some spurious argument, why not? Everything was why we want it. And I really take my hat off to that board in particular and the local councillors working in tandem to get that forward. I'm a little bit concerned about the addition of including financially, but as I read those words, they do not infer that there will be a reinvestment of $26 million in full or in part. Yeah. That is still the subject of a future report that you've just confirmed is coming, Mr. Chair. So I'm willing to support it and continue to support the board, but there is no inference in the reds there that a dollar is being transferred from the disposal amount, 26 million up to, back into the centre and the high-level project plan. That will still be subject, like all the other unlocks, are subject to the future decisions of this committee.
Tisha, Maureen, can you just give us a timeline that, that you'll be progressing through these, because I must admit in an earlier presentation about Henderson, it really was not a lot was going to happen initially. It was going to be take quite a while for the initial disposals, for the initial interest, especially around the old Waitakere Centre. Is that well into next year? And the reason I'm saying that is because we're going to have this discussion on unlock categories and land optimisation well before then, if that was the case.
Chair, in an attempt to answer that, my understanding is that the first key development move is around the Central 1 building, particularly the car parks there. So that, as I understand it, will happen in the next financial year, towards the end of the next financial year. Preparations, of course, will commence earlier than that in terms of making it happen.
So, given the history there, because as Councillor Holst and Cooper know, that Waitakere actually tried for a long time to get other people interested in the land around that building anyway, and it's been 6 years of the Super City and we still haven't had anyone really popping up, so I don't think it's likely to happen immediately, and I think we will have the reports back, the required report back on optimisation and the unlocked categories well before then. And let's face it, it has to be basically September, October, because it informs the LTP hugely.
Yes. Yes, through the Chair, just to confirm that, and we have every intention of getting those reports through to you shortly on the wider unlock ring fencing of funds or partial ring fencing of funds. And just to confirm, we just want to make sure that we've got our process correct, that there's actually a policy decision by this committee about if funds should be ring fenced in unlock locations before we make specific one-off decisions. So I do understand the concerns raised by both the ward councillors, but we're just trying to ensure correct process and policy is followed.
All right. Well, Councillor Watson.
Yeah, I'm just taking that discussion a little wider, Mr. Chair. I understand what's been said about the unlock categories here. I can recall in the time of the last council when a resolution was passed with respect of disposal of service property, there was some commentary to the desirability of part or whole of those funds being then returned to local communities, and that would be seen as a way of perhaps encouraging local boards to be a little bit more forthcoming. Clearly, in the case of Henderson Massey, they've advanced this series of disposals on the hope, and I think it'll probably be a little stronger than hope, that the returns are going to go to achieve their objectives in Henderson. But if we take that out to the rest of Auckland in light of that previous resolution I referred to, I would hope that any policy or future discussions is applied across Auckland as a whole then, as originally signalled, because obviously while we've got unlock projects on the way, there are plenty of other areas of deprivation, maybe not on that scale, who would similarly benefit from a similar view of these policy of a policy whereby in part or whole was returned to that community.
So, Councillor Watson, I think you can be comforted. I think you'll notice from the presentations the local boards made a couple of weeks ago that we've got them to focus on coming back with one or two projects in each area. Now, a number of those local boards clearly coordinate with the transform and the unlock categories, and indeed, obviously, the support, which is the next level down. We are aware there are other boards and other areas that are not even in the support category. They are the next level down, and obviously, transform, unlock, and support has all been based around the spatial priorities, which the council has agreed, and also obviously coordinates with the unitary plan. So for the long-term plan, one of the things that I think many of us would say, and certainly I have briefed it to Mr. Kimpton, is that we'd like to see what we can do, that pretty well every board gets something at some stage, even if it's starting projects or getting investigations, so that you're not just continually being dropped off. Because obviously those local board areas that aren't in any of the, as I say, transform, unlock or support, are going to get very wary and fight increasingly about disposing of land when they see everything goes into a consolidated pot and they're on the never as the project. So we hope through the annual plan that we can just try and deliver, and the Mayor's more than aware we've got to find the money, but so it's all LTP. So. All right, so we have no one else. We're going to move in. Sorry. Councillor Tupou.
Oh, it was just quickly, I mean, I do absolutely hear what Councillor Watson's saying, but Councillor Hulse and I would not be supporting this if it was not a metropolitan centre identified in that tranche of 9 town centres to either transform, unlock or support. I mean, we're very well aware of that, and I just want to back up the Henderson Massey Local Board that it wasn't their idea to say, oh, we'll get that money. It was actually in discussions, Panuku, with us over time. It wasn't a let's grab it because we can at all. And I know that they do not expect that there'd be 26 million coming back to them, not in any shape or form. They just want to see something happen and stop their town dying when it's actually a metropolitan centre, which, you know, would be a pretty bad look for Auckland Council if one of our metropolitan centres is a ghost town. So, and I also think that when we did that prioritisation, Panuku did that, we did that with them at least 2 years ago now. We didn't even have the unitary plan completed. Things change, opportunities change. And I think we just have to be really nimble. And when you've got a local board that say, yep, get rid of our parking, which is unprecedented. And in my Takaru days, people lost their council roles for getting rid of, you know, wanting to pay $2 for car parks. People actually lost their jobs. So I think they're incredibly brave, you know, to do that. But also, we're a transport-oriented development, you know, and we were before our time at the time, but now we're lagging. And I think this will be a really good contribution to the form of our region and encouraging people to use public transport. So I just want to defend our local board. They're certainly not, you know, trying to be opportunistic in this. Thank you.
Right, I'm going to put the resolution. All those in favour? Resolutions. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? None against. Thank you. Unanimous. Wonderful. Right, transform Onehunga. No. Letitia and Gavin. Oh, no, Marion.
Don't you support this?
Thank you, Mr Chair. Again, this is another procedural report to approve the disposal of the property set out in the Transform Onehunga High-Level Project Plan and in this instance, the reinvestment of the proceeds of sale from these properties, which was endorsed by the Planning Committee on 28th of March. Just to note, there is the pre-existing agreement that there would be funds ring-fenced from the disposal of land in transform locations.
Councillor Lee, Denise.
I don't have a question per se, but I'm happy to move, Mr Chair.
You're done with moving it?
At comments time, I'll say something.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Collins. Right, we have no discussion.
Well workshopped.
Tenardi, yep.
It's a general comment, not specifically about Onehunga. I'm worried with that. What I'm seeing is a bit of a lack of consistency in terms of the Māori impact statement. I worry when the sale of any assets, you know, that process, whether it's by sale of unlocking or whatever, and it might be a car park, might be a building, might be something else. I'm just worried that not enough work has been done on identifying if there is an interest or not, if there is a proposal to include iwi, how does it impact on mana whenua, you know, all of those issues. There are some Māori impact statements that are really, really good, and then there are some that there's just nothing in them. So I suppose it's not a question, it's just a sort of to highlight the you know, our issue.
Through the Chair, by way of very brief explanation, a very comprehensive report, including Māori impact statement, went to the Planning Committee on 28th of March 2017 regarding the Transform Onehunga proposal. Now, what the committee resolved was that the Finance and Performance Committee will need to approve the reinvestment of proceeds of sale from the development sites in the Transform project area, and also the disposal of the sites, which is the purpose of bringing this report back here. So this isn't intended to be a substantive report, it's merely intended to be a procedural report.
Cool, and like I said, it's not, my intention isn't to line up the Onehunga one. It's about being consistent through Henderson, through, wherever. As you know, or I don't know whether you know or not, but I'm on the planning committee and I'm quite happy with the work that's been done in the Onehunga plan. But I have my doubts in the other areas. But cool.
Okay, right, we will,
I have just thought to clarify, Mr Chair, although we can clearly read in paragraph C of the recommendations about reinvestment of proceeds, and that's as per policy that we've all decided on for transform categories. Do we need to have the same wording though in A as we've just had, just for uniformity purposes?
Yes.
As we've just had in the Henderson, we might as well keep the wording exactly the same.
Just
So
to make it
suggest
have
we
to support an
insert
amendment.
those words, though, isn't it, Mr Chairman?
Make it consistent.
Yeah.
Yes, seconder, I
Mr
support
Chairman,
that.
it's a transform where the expectation is there'll be financial rather than an unlock, which is different, but still, I support it.
Yeah, I just,
yep, we'll put it in.
uniformity purposes.
Yep.
And the other comment I'd make, Mr Chair, quickly, is that these sites are in and immediately around the village, the town centre of Onehunga, and that the Onehunga Business Association is supportive of both what is happening here today and also the transform category designation in general. So very much looking forward to the journey ahead and wish Panuku Development Auckland all the best for their last in-person session tonight at the Waikaraka Sports Grounds Clubhouse, for locals to have their say ahead of the framework plan. Good luck, Panuku.
Right, we will put the motion moved by Councillor Denise Lee and seconded by Councillor Collins. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Again, unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Mr Chair, councillors.
Right, Liz and Marguerite.
Recommendation, Mr Chair.
The mover, seconder, Councillor Collins.
Good morning, councillors and Mr Mayor. So this paper asks you to adopt the revised Auckland Council fees framework and expense policy for appointed members. The framework was first adopted in 2014, and we're proposing 3 key changes. We've done a review of the framework because we are right in the middle of, we've just appointed our advisory panels, and we're in the process of appointing our independent hearings commissioner, and the framework applies to both. So timing-wise, it was timely to do it now. There's 3 key changes that we're proposing. First one is to increase the fees for independent commissioners by 10%. These fees have been unchanged since 2010. We're getting some pretty strong feedback from our commissioners that it is timely to review them. The second change is the application of the expenses policy to commissioners. At the moment, the what expenses are being reimbursed is in their individual contracts, so it's just making our life easier. And the third one is making explicit a practice that has been happening since 2011, but was not transparent in the framework, about providing some support to members, to disabled members. So that applies in particular to the members of the Disability Advisory Panel. And it's basically making it explicit that we have to provide them with what is called, in the jargon, reasonable accommodations, in order to term the necessary support for them to be able to perform their role effectively. So that's the short version. Happy to give more details if needed.
Agreed. Have we thought about building in an inflationary aspect anyway, so that it automatically happens each year, rather than letting it lapse another 6 years, or was that not necessary in your mind?
We could certainly do that. I think, through your chair, because all of the fees and expenses are captured within the one framework and policy, it would be reasonable to make sure that any inflationary element is actually built into that policy as a whole.
We would have to look at the impact on the ongoing impact on fees that we charge back to our customers, though. So
maybe we should a work in progress on that. Meg off.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Look, I can understand the rationale. It's pretty clear. It's equivalent to the wage price inflation, and it leaves us about mid-placed in terms of the average for other councils. And the quantum we're talking about for council isn't great, 17,000, but for applicants, somewhat bigger. My two questions are these. One, is there actually evidence of recruitment and retention problems? Because that's often the defining thing when you change fees. And secondly, the descriptor of our commissioners are professionals who are outstanding in their fields of expertise. I don't know many hearing commissioners. I'd just like to know whether that's an accurate assessment of the skills of our hearing commissioners.
I mean,
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind me answering that,
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Mayor, because I've just been part of a process with Councillor Quacks and our senior staff of interviewing a whole pool, over 50 commissioners, and I am absolutely so impressed with the high calibre of these people. I mean, they are making decisions on behalf of this council, and actually it is really important for us to provide people and that are top-notch, because these are huge decisions. They take a lot of judgment and expertise. They're not just like, sitting around kind of reading a report, and they actually have to apply a lot of judgment and skill. And so these are the decisions that we have to defend, sometimes in environment court, places like that. They have to be absolutely robust, and we need the best possible people. And when I look back, I'm also told that it's never increased in this council, but my understanding was 3 years before amalgamation there were no increases either. So it amounts to about 1% increase a year. So I feel very confident that we've got a very high calibre group of people. They weren't complaining, but when we said, look, we're reviewing it, they said, oh, that would be really nice. We get it, we enjoy it, but often they can get more money elsewhere. And we have got probably one of the fastest growth rates and resource consent rates in the country. We need to be able to make sure they're available to us, and they're not thinking, well, actually, I can do better somewhere else. Because without them, we can't actually meet the legal requirements of resource consents and building, and we need that badly. So I guess that's a long answer, but I do feel very confident that they are highly skilled professionals.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I can, maybe that's been helpful. If I could just have some clarification about whether we have hard empirical evidence of recruitment and retention, or we might face that in the future. That wasn't clear to me from the report.
Thank you. Through the chair, we have certainly had an indication with recruitment and retention that we are going to struggle more and more over the next few recruitment rounds. I actually have received quite a lot of feedback from independent commissioners over the last 3 years, and particularly in the recruitment 3 years ago as well, that council is is not being fair in terms of its reluctance to review the rates of remuneration. We've also had instances where commissioners have pulled out of hearings because they've had better offers elsewhere that pay more. So the indication that we've had, particularly recently, is that we are struggling not to retain commissioners within our pool, but actually the commitment of those commissioners to attend hearings and follow through when they're appointed.
Thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Just on the other side of the coin, and taking up one of the comments that you made in the discussion recommendation, you talk about the potential reputational impact for council, particularly in light of, in respect to the people who end up bearing the cost of the increase. What's the sort of feedback or observations you would make on that, given that obviously there's going to be a consequential cost, not so much for council, but for applicants?
Sorry, I'll just turn to that table.
So, but all in all, the total cost that will go back to applicants is we've estimated to be about $200,000. That's obviously in total. Yes, it is an increase for applicants. It is an increase. It's a relatively modest increase given the total amount of fees that they have to pay for those big resource consents. But those fees haven't changed for a long time either. So I don't think it's unreasonable for, both fees for the commissioners and the applicants to move as time passes. Have we, with regards to your question of whether we've consulted with the public, the answer is no.
I just was thinking more, Marguerite, of people that go through the process where they're actually having to require hearings commissioners. If Auckland Council sort of monitors feedback there, and particularly as it goes to pricing, I can imagine what people would say, but I just wonder if we had any sort of anything a little bit more structured in terms of keeping check of how financial decisions like this can potentially impact on people that are engaged in this process. That was all.
Through the chair, the impact on applicants for an increase in fees is very minimal in terms of the overall applications for resource consents and other resource management decisions. So, for example, less than 5% of resource consent applications will be heard by duty commissioners, so that'll be part of the impact on applicants. The feedback that I've received from resource consenting staff is that often applicants actually request the independent commissioners to be considering their applications because of their higher level of expertise and also their independence. Less than 1% of those applications go to hearing, which is where the bulk of the impact will be held. Those hearings are essentially applications where they're not complying within our normal standard rules, for example. So this is for large, significant proposals generally that go outside of the scope of what council's already determined to be appropriate. So very, very minimal we consider to be the impact on applicants.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got two questions. One is on the mileage allowance. I wondered why you were changing the mileage allowance for commissioners from the IRD rate to the rate for elected members if they're not elected members. And my second question is around the disability, extra support for our disability support panel. Bearing in mind that this panel's been operating for 2 terms, we're in our 3rd term, and we haven't had the reasonable accommodations, sort of extra funding. Does that mean that we haven't been aligned with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities for the last 2 terms?
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. With regards to the mileage, for whatever reason, the Remuneration Authority actually uses the AA rate and it's when we were reviewing the policies to make sure that they were aligned that we actually realized that they were two different rates. And it's just for ease of administration, making sure that we're applying the same rate because it's going through the same payroll system.
So is it more or less?
So the RRD rate is 0.72, 73, and the AA rate is 0.74. So it's very minimal. Yeah. With regards to your second question, so we have paid for support persons for disabled members of the disability panel before. So we were providing for those payments, but it wasn't explicit in the framework, and there was no consistent rule that we could apply. So actually we were paying the same rate as the rate that we're paying to the members. And I thought it would be easier to have to have it explicit and to have a formula in there that makes it transparent. And the reason why I'm suggesting that we make it 50% of the rate that the members are being paid is that if the rate for the members increases, then it will follow up as opposed to have a set fee.
And this is my final supplementary, so that's all within the current budget we have allocated to the panels?
Yes, that is correct.
Right, we have Councillor Quacks and Councillor Sayers, and we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to finish everything before 1 o'clock easily.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to back up the comments that were made by Councillor Cooper in regards to this. As one of the councillors who interviewed these commissioners on behalf of the council, I've got to say that I was highly impressed by the quality of the people that put themselves forward to do this. And these were some of the leaders in their fields in legal, engineering, architecture, heritage and RMA. These were very highly qualified people. And look, people around here know how dry I am, and the driest of the dry, but $17,000 is all that the council is coming out of the public purse. And I would expect that certainly the applicants would be more than happy to be assured that they're getting the highest quality commissioners that are available for this. So I don't think that we'll hear any quibbling from anybody on this.
Thank you, Councillor Quacks. Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just following up on Councillor Simpson's question around the mileage, and under this, because my understanding at the moment the mileage drops at a certain point. I think it's 5,000 Ks or something like that. Is that part of this, considered in this review? Who makes that decision? Is that through the AA you mentioned, or IRD, or is that an internal policy, and has that been reviewed as part of this process?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the rule for elected members, the 5,000 kilometre rule for elected members is set by the Remuneration Authority. So we apply those rules as directed in their direction, as directed by them. We haven't put it in this framework because we've never had the case of either a panel member or a hearings commissioner doing more than 5,000 kilometres, and we do appoint people within the Auckland region. So and the number of meetings or the number of hearings that they do, they're very, very far from that limit. So we didn't consider it was necessary to put it in there.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a mover and a seconder. I'm going to put the resolutions A, B and C. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. Right, we have a 5-minute break, so it's 1:15, folks. 1:15.
You reckon he's going to go? In the first 5 minutes, you will.
Okay, councillors, we need a quorum around the table.
This should be easy.
Always hard to catch a quorum. I've struggled on many occasions.
Right, welcome Amakura and Graham, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. This is my first finance performance meeting, so for those that don't know me, haven't met me before, my name's Graham Pryor. I'm the General Manager of Te Waka. The Te Takatini project or area is one of the council has set aside investment in things Māori, transformational outcomes for Māori, and we're reporting that on the third quarter. As you can see in the executive summary, first two areas, the Whairawa and Whai Paenga, are running at 63% of our budget spend up to the end of this third quarter. Whai Tiaki and the Whai Tika are running at 40 and 31% respectively. So we expect that we'll end up with a 93% spend by the end of the year in these projects, by the end of the fourth quarter. There has been a review process been taking place around Te Takatini to look at the Māori transformational outcomes and what are transformational as opposed to business as usual. We'll be reporting back at the end of the fourth quarter on the results of that and the future implications of that for the Te Takatini project. In the commentary over the page, I think the highlight point out of here, or might be a low point for some, is the underspend in the forecast in the financial year 17, which is 589,000. There are a few projects that we've highlighted in the report that are the result of that, and in our monitoring and reporting back to the performance committee, we've had significant engagement with the various parts of council that are running these Te Takatini projects, and that's our best estimate of where we're going to be at the end of the year. I think I'll leave it at that, Chair, and see if there's any questions.
Got a mover, Councillor Philippana?
Yep.
Second by Councillor Simpson? No?
I'm happy to second, but I was going to ask a question.
Okay, we'll put Councillor Simpson to second, and question, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, because we're in a finance meeting. You do know that you'd not necessarily have to meet your 100% target on spend against budget, don't you?
Yes, and that's definitely part of this. The departments and the areas of council are well aware of being efficient with the money and being effective, and so it's not a given that everybody has to spend all their money. It is an indicator that we have to report back to IMSB on, which is why we highlight the budget against actual spend.
There you go.
Yeah, tēnā korua. Thank you very much for the report. Just a couple of questions. I'm not sure what the process is, but if you underexpend, do you get carryover or do you lose it?
No, it's primarily be lost, Mayor. There are a couple instances where things will be accrued for the following year.
Yeah.
That's key areas like, I think it's the transport project, which is looking at being carried over because it's CapEx. But the rest of it, yes, if it's operational, it will not carry forward.
Maybe I can just foreshadow a question that officials can come back on later, but years ago we developed in central government a process of carryover, because what used to happen was that people would say, Jesus, we're going to lose this, so let's spend it, and the quality of the spend at the end was generally pretty low. And I'd kind of like maybe at a at a future point or offline just to have an explanation as to why we don't create an incentive or a disincentive to spending up low quality rather than being able to carry over if there's a particular reason for under-expend. The second question that I've got, you mentioned that there was a review process on the outcomes, and I suppose I had in the back of my mind what's happening to say which of these programs are working well and doing what we want them to do and which of them are working less well. Can you tell us about the process of review and what sort of process you're following and what sort of criteria you're looking at?
Through the chair, we had a look at identifying a range of criteria, those that had been established right at the beginning, that facilitated for projects that were defined as transformational to come into the portfolio, criteria that was identified by the Independent Multi-Statutory Board, and we've taken each project through that assessment process and done a review and reported back to the ELG. So we've been able to, as a result, define that criteria, and we're just in the process of socialising that much more now, and getting people to understand how we're defining that as opposed to business as usual. And we will have the full detail of that available in our final report, and it will definitely influence the way in which spend will be happening in the next financial year.
Okay, so that'll be coming back to this committee or another committee in due course, and we can discuss it and what the outcomes are.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Just get Sue to respond to your first question, Mayor Goff.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, the process we have in place is that we do have agreed policies and procedures to carry forward CapEx, particularly where they relate to multi-year projects. So that is what the officers here are referring to in terms of their transport project. With respect to your second question around OPEX, the requirements that we have of a balanced operating budget means that we monitor all spend very closely throughout the year, and that any underspend, whether it be in Takatini or another operating area, operating budget of council, is not carried forward. Essentially what that becomes is that it forms part of our savings targets and our efficiency budgets that must be achieved each year to balance that target. I can take you through the detail of that offline if you'd like me to.
Okay, I've just got one through you with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. How do you, given that I understand why you do it like that, but don't you have the disadvantage that each department would be keen to spend up at the end of their financial year for fear that if you don't spend up fully, the ELT will say, well, we obviously gave you more than you needed last year, so you'll get less next year as well. I mean, how do you line the incentives so that people are spending wisely without fear that that will detract from their future funding?
Again, through the chair, I understand your question. The way that we do that is that the savings and efficiency targets that we have to achieve to balance the budget are actually allocated out against each ELT member, so that, if you like the expression, is they have skin in the game.
Thank you.
That's the question I was going to ask.
Right, we have a mover and a seconder for the report. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Engaged? Thank you, Graham.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, painless? Right, Mount Albert swimming pool. Oh, Alistair is here.
Sorry,
On
Mr.
your own,
Chair.
Alistair, do you want Margie to come up as well?
Yes, I would like Margie to come up,
Yep.
mainly because I've misrepresented something her board said in the report, which we'll get to in a second.
Whoops.
The report before you today relates to the trust deed for the Mount Albert Grammar School Community Swimming Pool Trust, which is a CCO. The trustees of that trust are proposing to amend the terms of that trust deed as set out in the executive summary. The background to this is that the role of the trust has changed significantly over the last couple of years, so that now it is a relatively passive asset-owning trust. So the major thrust of the proposed changes to the trust deed are to reduce the number of trustees required on the trust, which is supported by staff, and there are a few other sort of consequential amendments about the the quorum and the number of trustees to make amendments to the trust deed. I guess the one issue where staff disagree with the local board is that the trust is proposing that currently council appoints a majority of the trustees. The proposal is that one of the Albert Eden local board members would, as of right, be appointed as a trustee to the trust. The staff are recommending that we do not accept that part of the amendment to the trust deed because of the potential conflicts of interest it may cause in the future. Not so much now with the current role of the trust being relatively passive, but there is potential in the future for a conflict of interest. We're suggesting that it's just left to council as to who it appoints the trustees and not have the compulsion for it to be a local board member, although that would always be an option. Maybe if I hand over to Margie, or if I covered off, I don't know.
Yeah.
Happy to take questions.
Nothing you want to say, Margie? No?
I guess just to add to that is that since the trust has been in existence since the 90s, there's always been an elected member from the local body, whether it was the Mount Albert Community Board or the Albert Eden Local Board, sitting on that trust, and that those trustees hold significant knowledge. I am a member of the Albert Eden Local Board, but I also need to declare I sit on, currently am one of those members selected to sit on that trust. However, I'm speaking as a local board member, and the board have had several conversations around ensuring that there is continuity on that trust, that the institutional knowledge is held within that trust, and that this is actually one of the key community assets that form part of the recreational network in Auckland. And it does, that trust merely owns the building, it does not own the land that it sits on. That belongs to Mount Albert Grammar School and the Ministry of Education. So actually we don't see it as an issue around there being a conflict of interest, because historically it's been very clear about the roles there, and council have that management role and oversight of the facility. The board, the Albert Eden Local Board, continue to believe that there is an appropriate place for a member of an elected member to sit on that trust. Thank you.
Egoff.
Yeah, I like the idea of the shared facilities, and we were discussing it recently at Western Springs, where you have a shared facility between a school and the community. I think that makes a lot of sense. But this goes back some time. What's the difference between how this governance works in relation to the Mount Albert Grammar Community Swimming Pool and the standard governance arrangements that we would enter into today? For example, what we might enter into for the indoor courts at Western Springs. How does it differ, and do we need some sort of alignment between what we're doing now and what might have been decided, you know, a decade, 2 decades ago?
Look, I'm not familiar with Western Springs proposal specifically, but the current council board appointment policy relating to CCOs says that elected members should only be appointed to the boards of CCOs and COs if there is a compelling reason to do so. Generally, it's to be avoided because of conflicts, both real and perceived. So I'd say that the similarities here would be the overarching council policy towards appointments.
Just to clarify, Alistair, thank you for that. I wasn't talking just so much about, you know, whether the elected member is on or not. I just wondered about the overall governance arrangements and whether this is a product of history and different from what we might generally do today.
It is a product of history to the extent that the trust probably isn't even necessary today, other than the fact that if the trust was to be wound up, the aquatics facility legal ownership would revert to the school. So
good reason for keeping it going.
Yes. So look, the governance arrangements as they are just a quirk of things and how they've evolved, and it probably wouldn't be how we would set it up today if we were starting from scratch.
It's my understanding, as most of the facilities where we have community access agreements is, excuse me, Avondale College in my area, we don't have council staff. Or sorry, council elected members sitting on the trust board. So, Margie, do you?
So I guess this facility isn't part of the community access network, and that $1 million that was granted last week into all those organisations. So this isn't part of that network. What I think is relevant is that it might be a product of history, but it's probably not for much longer, given that the work that was completed 18 months ago on the facility at Mount Albert Aquatic was enough to keep it going for a further 8 years, and then actually that's when the facility either needs to be replaced on that site or somewhere else within the council network. So I guess we're not taking a long-term investment on that site because that doesn't work for the school, it doesn't work for the community, and it doesn't work for the users of the facility.
I have Councillor Simpson, Quacks, Cooper, Membakake and Mike Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I'm trying to look at this from a helicopter view, from good governance. And so you've had, you want the reduction of trustees, which will make a reduction of the quorum, all right? So I suppose if we've got some from the school and some from council, I want to look at the fact that at a quorum, how do we know that we must have at least one of each? And that's not in the resolution. So that's my first question. And my second question, can you just confirm where the chair comes from? Is that completely, because you've got council and school, and is the chair a separate one?
So your first question, yes, there is already a provision in the trustee that for a quorum there must be a trustee appointed by either the school and council, so that's not being changed, which is why it's not detailed there.
Okay.
Your second question, sorry, I've got a mind like a goldfish and I've already forgotten.
The chair, so you've got,
Yes.
you've got 3 plus 3, or 2 plus 2 now. So who's the chair? Is that one of either side or someone completely different?
No, it's a council appointee, and the trustee doesn't specify who that should be, but as of sort of tradition, there's been an independent chair appointed by council,
right,
and the local board members have filled the other trustee roles.
Okay, and then just my last, if I may, and the key reason for making the trust, reducing the number? And
practicalities. Seven's a lot of trustees to try to find for a trust which now has virtually nothing to do.
Right, okay.
A very passive role, and it's a lot of time and effort to go find.
Okay, and just confirm, and I think you've said it, but just for my own peace of mind, if we don't specifically stipulate a local board representative, it doesn't mean that the rules can't have one anyway, because Auckland Council has 2 shared governance entities, so you could argue that a council representative is a local board representative.
Yes, and to be clear, with the current role of the trust, as staff, we wouldn't be fundamentally opposed to having local board members sitting there as a trustee, but as Margie's pointed to, sometime in the future decisions are going to have to be made about the future of that facility, and who knows where the governance framework review and where the local board will be in that decision-making process, that they could well be the decision makers, and to have them as of right sitting as trustees on their trust, there could be a conflict in the future. So we're not saying, hey, don't have local board members on this trust at all. All we're saying is don't have local board members on this trust as of right, because there will come a time when that could and will present a conflict.
Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Quacks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sort of interested in this perceived or potential conflict of interest for a local board member. would we not expect that a local board member would handle any potential conflict of interest like anybody else? And so what is the message here that we may be sending to the local board by not having a local board member, as of right, somebody with local knowledge? And I would have thought that in deference to the principle of subsidiarity, this would be particularly important to have a local board member on this board.
Look, I think you're right. Conflicts are there to be managed and can be managed. I think the issue is one of perception and good practice. Eventually, my team would like to bring a report probably to this committee where we do in fact devolve a lot of the decision making around community focused CCOs like this to the relevant local board, which will ironically probably increase the potential conflict of interest, because the principle of subsidiarity, the local board, I would argue, should be making decisions around the appointments to these CCOs, governing their performance, funding issues, should sit at the local board, but that's only going to exacerbate the potential for a conflict of interest if that's where we go with this. So you're right, conflicts are there to be managed, and I've no doubt you all as politicians and members of the community manage conflicts on a daily basis, but the issue we're fighting with here is one of perception and also a very real potential at some stage. Margie's looking slightly quizzical, so maybe I'll give her the right of reply.
No, it's the very real potential. I think those words are...
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I support these recommendations. I mean, I think that if we look at all our other CCOs, we don't have elected members on them. And this is the opportunity to get this in line with everything else. I do worry about conflicts. And if you're... the truth is, you can manage your conflict on day-to-day stuff, but if you get big, huge decisions like this, what is the point of being there if you can't input into them? That's the concern about having it as of right. But seeing that's not even in there, I'm just supporting these recommendations. I think it's best practice to just move along as we've done with all our other CCOs and make sure we don't have elected members, and that leaves people really free to contribute their views at the time of change or anything like that very freely and frankly. I'm happy to move the recommendations, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Simpson, so Member Coffey.
Kia ora. Look, I'm not opposed to trustee numbers going up or down at all. Actually, it really is about the precedent that we set. And my question to you is, can you confirm in the past or currently the Māori representation on this trust? And I say that in the context of all trusts, all interests, but I'm just picking on you because you're the report in front of us right now. I've got a supplementary question to you.
So unfortunately, I'll be in front of you for most reports about trusts, so I'll get prepared. Historically, I don't think there has been strong Maori representation on this trust. Margie will probably have a better idea. She's had a longer association with the trust than me. So I can't give you too much of a way of background. All I can say going forward that due to the incredibly passive nature of this trust, who's represented on the trust is probably of little or no consequence, because in effect it does nothing.
Don't hold back, just get it out there.
It's all right, they don't pay either.
Well, it's not quite the answer I was after, but I guess it's in the context of Article 1, in terms of the general commitment to partnerships and with Māori representation. I don't agree with your Māori impact statement saying that there is no impact for Māori. Actually, representation is very important.
As a broader principle, looking at council's board appointment policy for CCOs, which covers appointments like this, there is provisions within that to increase the diversity of the makeup of our boards generally, and to help further that objective, members of the IMSB are included on nomination and interview panels for CCO director appointments. So it's probably more evident at the substantive CCOs than at the more community-facing trusts, where it's generally harder to get anyone, let alone be picky about who.
So it's a timely reminder, we've got to walk the talk. We just had the treaty impact statement in the previous report, and it's a classic example of not walking the talk. Kia ora.
Comment.
Councillor Lee, Mike Lee. Just questions. I may have missed it, but the report says the local board was invited to comment and has not given any feedback. Could we be updated on?
Yes, as I alluded to, slightly misrepresenting, the local board apparently it was considered at a workshop, which is why Nagi's here. So.
Yeah, so we've had a report come up to the board, to a business meeting, but we'd also discussed it at a workshop, and the board's view was that the direction that the trust deed was seeking was supported by the board, but there was no written formal feedback provided back through to staff regarding that, but it was discussed at workshop.
And so the trust which owns the pool wants to change its constitution, and the council officers say fair enough, we agree with that, but one thing, we want to remove the right, the headmaster from Mount Albert Grammar, he's in there as of right, but any as of right elected representatives, elected officials of the council, if you will, should not be on that board as of right. That's what. So what does the local board think of that?
The local board strongly believe that there should be representatives of the local board as trustees for that trust.
As of right?
Yes.
Okay, now I heard the officer talk about the principle of subsidiarity, which you don't often hear in here when it comes to local boards, car parks or whatever, and that principle may lead, because of the powers of the local board over the swimming pool, may lead to a potential conflict of interest. Is that right?
Yes.
But then we look through here, we see that the role of the trust is fairly passive. I'm not convinced. Actually, if we're talking about the principle of subsidiarity, and we should be listening to the local board. And therefore, if you raise that argument, it's a two-edged sword. And I actually believe that the local board's right, as members, elected officials of this council and representatives of their community, should be there as of right. So I can't accept the recommendations of non-elected people removing elected people from these sorts of positions.
Yeah, just
on the principle of subsidiarity.
Just to be clear, with its staff recommendation, that's our advice. You're the decision makers in this. We're not removing anybody, and our advice to you is that local board members may still be appointed to this if our recommendation is followed, but just not as of right.
But on your advice, they wouldn't be.
Yep.
No.
Okay, so
well,
let's be frank about it. You don't want elected people on that swimming pool trust.
As of right.
As of right.
Yeah. Right. No, at all, because the same logic pertains. Be honest about it. You don't want them there.
We, as I said before, if we were making a recommendation, we will have to shortly because the trustees' terms are expiring, and this really isn't a discussion for here. I have no fundamental objection to local board members sitting on this trust at this time. But in the future, there will be a greater potential for a perceived conflict of interest. Trustees fulfilling their duties as a trustee have to act in the best interest of the trust. And when decisions come as to what will be the future of that pool, and the objectives of that trust are to maintain that pool and to continue in that pool, but the local board may have to make a decision to actually not support that pool in the future, but to in fact build a pool somewhere else, the local board members sitting there as trustees have got conflicting interests there. On one hand, they will have their obligation as a trustee to do everything in their power to make sure that that pool exists in its current form. On the other hand, they will have to make a decision in the best interest of council.
Surely, like everyone else, they declare if there is a conflict of interest. That's what we do at every meeting. Surely, on the same logic, we shouldn't be here.
The browbeating of the staff. No, can I?
That reduces the quorum.
Anything else, Councillor Lee? No? Okay. Councillor Watson.
Thank you. I think early on in the piece someone mentioned the word practical or practicalities. We've got a situation here where the local board has always had someone on it by the sounds of things, or for a good period of time. There's clearly a local board interest in this facility. The future, I think someone mentioned 8 years, but who knows? With the council, you never know how long time periods stretch out when it comes to replacement of facilities. There is going to be that intervening period, and I think Margie mentioned the notion of institutional knowledge, which I think is very important when we come to issues such as this, where changes might be getting proposed. And if you don't have someone there that has some notion of where you come from, then that sometimes can result in decision making that doesn't reflect their overall good. They obviously have a concern here. So just notwithstanding the fact there doesn't seem to be too much going on with the trust, the local board clearly has a concern that in this transitionary period, that it's highly desirable that they are ensured that someone from the board be on the trust. That's clear. So given their association with this trust, and I think it goes beyond just one member, I think it goes to several members by the looks of things, then I'm inclined to agree with Councillors Quacks and Lee that it's important to listen to the local board and what they're saying. I think conflicts of interest can be managed, and I think that in the event of a change at some indeterminate point in the future, I think it's even more important that there be someone there that has some notion of the historical antecedents to where you may ever land at that point. So I guess, Mr. Chair, what I'm signalling is that the fact that the local board have a concern, I would have thought practicalities might have resulted in the assurance that yes, there is always going to be a local board person there, but that doesn't seem to be the case, and that the local board's looking to have a little bit more certainty. So I'm inclined to support that, I think.
Well, I'm listening to the Mana Whenua representatives there thinking maybe antecedents would qualify for someone else being on there as well. Well, at the moment, it's just Councillor Simpson, you're next.
Sorry. Thank you. I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable about seconding this. I always thought that because the Auckland Council trustee appointment could be a local board, they could be there anyway, all right? Yeah. And so that was kind of where I was coming from. I suppose my question now, just to be really clear, is the appointment comes on this trust, comes via the Appointments and Performance Committee. Is that correct?
Yes.
So it's not, and your only concern around not having it absolutely mentioned now is that in the future, when potentially there is a disposal, is that correct? You said it's not now, because you haven't got a problem about now. You've got a problem about what potentially could happen. So I just want to tease out the practicalities of the future concern you have about, I mean, because the way I see it, I mean, I'm on the Appointments and Performance Committee. I mean, I wouldn't have any problem about putting a local board member on it. But I just kind of wonder why it has to be in here now, and what's the worry you have about not having it in, and in the future again. Can you just run it past me again? Sorry.
Right. If we go back to what council's policy is in appointing people to the boards of CCOs and trusts, it is not to have elected members appointed as board members. So the question is, what's so special about this trust that justifies a deviation from that policy? And we as staff are recommending to you that there isn't anything sufficiently different about this trust. Now, that's not to say we do not think that local board members should sit there, but our advice to you is, why lock ourselves into a position where we're perpetually in breach of that policy by saying we'll, as of right, have a local board member there. And as it currently stands, I don't think there would be a barrier to having a local board member there, but that is a decision and that is information relevant when it comes to the Appointments and Performance Review Committee as to who to appoint here, not, I'd suggest, to this process of amending the trust deed.
So, can I just, sorry, Mr. Chairman, that's important. The first sentence you said is normally elected members would not be the Auckland Council representative. Well then, sorry, I don't want to second this, because I think if we really believe that the local board should have a place, we're asking for an exemption on that policy.
No. So let's be quite clear. Let's just look about the major CCOs we have. It's been made quite clear, and the Mayor was obviously at a new policy, a controversial policy, but made it quite clear elected members can apply to be on those boards.
Can apply, but not there as of right.
No, not as right. And so you can apply, and if you stump up and your qualifications are equal to and better than external people who come forward, then the Performance and Appointments Committee should be assessing any councillors to be suitable, or in this case,
So-
any local board members to be suitable.
So the recommendation up there is entirely consistent with our appointments policy.
Okay. And I don't have a swimming pool, so who's got the delegation for swimming pools?
So I think Alistair is coming from in the future, and it could be the near future, meaning the LTP, where because we're going to a new 10-year plan, there is no swimming pools at the moment in the 10-year plan. But the community facilities plan that has come back has identified the need for a pool in the inner west and possibly 2 pools. That seems to be the next priority, then followed by West Auckland. So the issue there is there could be a conflict coming up sooner rather than later, because there could be a decision to have a pool in the Foe, but what it will impact on is what to do with the pool in Mount Albert, where there's equally, we don't want to be losing that pool or a pool in that area. And so the Albert Eden Board are going to be fighting pretty tough, I would have thought, to try and make sure that if there is going to be something replaced in 8 or 10 or beyond years, that that Mount Albert doesn't lose its pool. So that's where the conflicts can arise going forward.
Oh, look, I'm not sure anymore, Mr. Chair. Somebody else can second it.
Okay.
Doesn't sound very democratic to me.
Second.
Yeah, Councillor Darby will second. Thank you, Councillor Darby. Right, we have Councillor Hills and then Mayor Goff.
Thank you. And I guess, first of all, we've had a lot of experience of this on the Kaipātiki local board, because we have so many community organisations that get local board funding. We've actually cropped up a whole lot of issues along the way when the deeds actually forced a local board member to be there and a local board member couldn't be on, and it was, then you have to change the deed, and then the trust is actually in breach. So is it my understanding that by opposing the provision to automatically elect means that is the status quo, it's what's been forever? So
No. The status quo is just that council will appoint 4 trustees. Now, what the trust is proposing is to, first of all, reduce the number of trustees and to automatically make one of those trustees a local board member, but that has not been there before. It's been a practice that local board members have ended up on.
Not as of right.
But not as of right.
Right.
yeah, so just my concern, if we, I think this is becoming a lot more controversial than it needs to be. My concern is that we force automation or an automatic thing, then we're tying things in that have to be done as opposed to have a choice. What if the next local board decides they don't want to, or they can't, or they're too busy, or
If they all
maybe
don't get
Mark-
elected, there'll be no
Mark-
continuity.
Sorry.
Can I just respond to that comment? And that's this deed that this is the trust's deed that's been in existence since the 1990s, and in there it stipulates that there will be a member of the Eden Albert Community Board sitting on that trust. So it's a historical document that has required someone to be there. And what we're trying to do is bring the board, we're trying to support the trust to bring it into the 21st century, and that they could shrink their numbers, and that they still retained that composition.
I guess with just a quick example is that in Kaipātiki, it was all people that had to be on, and then we changed them all to liaison. So there was a liaison person from the local board, as opposed to forcing someone on all the boards, because then they could come back and advocate on the local board, but then they couldn't vote, and the same the other way. So we removed all because the old North Shore way was to have everyone as a director or whatever, and all our community trusts, and now it's just a liaison that has to be at the meetings, but it's not actually, because it made it very awkward when they came back and said, look, I want to support these things, but I can't vote because you're officially on both. So that's my experience over the last 6 years, that we moved away from what we're kind of asking. So I just think it's becoming more controversial than it needs to be, but I'm also a bit, it's hard to not support the local board's direction. I just know in our experience has been difficult when we did have people officially in positions, and now we've moved completely away from that in that area.
Mayor Goff, do you?
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. We're spending a long time debating an issue when we're told that the trust has no real role, having just debated a car park, which is going to be a car park whether it's New World or owned by council. So I have some sympathy with Councillor Lee's point earlier. I don't want to prolong it. I just want to ask, first of all, a question. Of the council-appointed trustees, we currently have 4 council-appointed trustees.
Yeah.
How many of those are members of the community, of the local board?
3 of them are, although one wasn't when she was appointed, but she got elected.
So we've got 3 out of 4 currently local board members. I want to make 2 points then. One, I don't think the conflict of interest is actually the material factor, because as everybody's agreed, you can manage a conflict of interest whether you are there as of right or whether you are there as a selected member and happen to be a local board member. So I don't think the conflict of interest is the issue. The issue, and I don't think the issue is whether or not local board members should be on the trust. Because as you've shown, 3/4 of your local of your council-appointed people are local board. The question is this: should you be there as of right because you are a local board member, or should you be selected because you're the best person and you also happen to be a local board member? And I guess my preference is the latter, that anybody selected for any position ought to be there selected on merit, not necessarily as of right because they're on the local board. But it's a line ball call. I don't think we're actually going to achieve a lot either way in the decision we make now. So why don't we just put it to a vote?
I've got Councillor Philip,
I'd like to
and
close
then
the
I'm going to
motion.
put it to the vote after that. So just remember, all we're doing here is approving the variation to the deed. We're not talking about appointments. That can come in the future at the Appointments Committee. Councillor Philip.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question and clarification now. With the old deed, was there a stipulation with the old deed that the community board member will have to be there?
There may have been originally, because Margie's saying so, but the current version prior to this amendment does not have that requirement in there.
So the current version hasn't got that as of right?
No.
The local board, and so the members that are currently on there, obviously using the current deed, are they also there through election, through nomination, or as of right?
They were appointed by in the previous term by the CCO Governance Committee. And one of the members, Glenda Fryer, she was appointed prior to that, but got elected at the previous election, so she wasn't local board member when she got appointed.
So, through you, Chair, is there any, I just want to ask Margie a question as well.
Yep.
Margie, look, since you've been on there, and I mean, just confirm how many years you've been on there?
I've just completed 2 terms, so that's 6 years.
Yeah. And have there been any occasion in the 6 years that you've had to declare conflict of interest?
I've declared my interest at every meeting, but they're not conflicts. I don't perceive them as conflicts.
And so supplementary, that still allowed you to vote
Absolutely.
again all the way through around any recommendations that were there?
Absolutely.
It was just interest because you're a local board member, but there was no conflict of interest where you weren't, where you couldn't vote?
Absolutely, 100%. You know, it doesn't impact on the business of the trust. I don't believe it impacts on the business of the board either. The trust actually has a building that has no very limited financial assets. The council runs a management contract for it. You know, it is very distanced from the day-to-day business of council. However, they're council appointees, and it's a community facility that is an integral part of the network that we try and deliver to improve sport and recreation in our communities, which is one of our drivers at council.
And just one more question, sorry, Chair. And so, Margie, your view is that you don't want to go through a selection process. The local board just wants to be, a member wants to be there as of right. That's basically what you're asking.
I think it's, yes, I guess what I believe is that the local board should be able to say these are the appropriate people, whether it gets rubber stamped through the performance monitoring committee or not, is that there is an appropriate place on that trust for members of the local board who are voted in to represent their community, and this is an asset in the community.
Okay. And Chair, just one comment. I applaud the staff for bringing the report here. And I mean, because that's your role, that's your job, is to say, here are some options, and B was there as an option, and it is up to us. So when I hear other councillors say, oh, look, you know, you're just putting this in there because you just don't want the local board, is rubbish. So I congratulate the fact that we have a recommendation, because for us, it is up to us around this particular table. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you, Chair.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, procedural question to you. You said you're going to take a vote on that. I'm assuming it's, because I don't think there'll be any disagreement with anything else, it's around this issue of whether the local board member should be on it by right. So I'm just checking that that is indeed your intention to have a vote on that, to sort that out, whether people agree with that or not, and then the balance of the items. Is that correct?
Well, I suppose I've been waiting for an amendment.
I'll put one up there.
One more question.
You know, if you want an amendment, because you know...
Aren't all the trustees local board members anyway now? I didn't realise that.
Yeah, 3 out of 4 are.
3 out of 4.
Can I respond to that? 3 out of 4 of the council appointed trustees. There are another 3 trustees that come from Mount Albert Grammar.
But that's what I mean of the
So
council.
3 out of 7.
So if it went to the Appointments and Performance Committee, it could be the same. There's no reason to say it wouldn't be the same.
Yep. In fact, there will be a report coming to you next month, which may or may not recommend that.
Right. Okay.
So, we have a mover and a seconder. Are you aware that
That would be
you're
a,
moving A and B?
Wouldn't that be a...
Take B separately. If you want to keep it as of right on, you'll vote against B.
Exactly. It's
Councillor Lee.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't hold up the meeting. A weakness in this report, Mr. Chairman, is that there are no local board views and applications in the report, and I don't know why the report couldn't have waited. I'm not sure if it's that urgent to actually receive those in writing. We've heard from board member Watson, and it's quite clear that the board feels that the obligations of the original trustee should be upheld in terms of democratic community representation. Now, there is a fine argument about whether the council's representatives should be unusually elected people or as of right or not. In other words, the argument is local board members are free to stand, but they will be judged whether they're suitable or not. I think that's really an insult when it comes to community democracy. The local board members are elected representatives of the Auckland Council. They are selected by the people of Auckland, by the people of their wards, not by a small group of people in the back room or Sheffield's consultancy recruitment executives. They're chosen by the people. And I think in terms of democracy and the principle of subsidiarity, we should respect that, and we should respect the deed and the purpose of the deed in terms of democratic community representation. So I would strongly oppose the recommendations to remove the appointment of local board members to run this swimming pool as of right. I think that the status quo, as the Trust Board has asked, in terms of that part of the representation, should remain. It's not for the Council to override what the Trust Board is recommending in terms of that constitution, if it means removing democracy or diminishing democracy.
Well, that was wide-ranging. We have an amendment, okay, and so I am going to take that as an amendment, so this is not a new, so you have it in front of you, moved by Councillor Watson and seconded by Councillor Quack, so that would be the whole A to A1 to 4, with the only change being in 1, okay? Are we quite clear? By approving this goes against our council policy, but why not?
Just, sorry, Chair, just clarification, because if the amendment, which is obviously going to be put first, if the amendment goes through, I'm assuming then that B goes or not? I'm assuming B does go,
Yes,
because
we
it's
don't
saying
need-
that they wouldn't.
Don't need
So,
B.
yeah,
Don't need
okay,
B. That's
thank
okay.
you.
Yep. All right, any questions, anyone? Okay. Got a mover and we've got a seconder. Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
No.
Show of
Point
hands.
division.
Show of
Show of hands.
Of show of hands, because it was...
Mr. Chairman,
even.
point of order, I've called for a division.
Oh,
You must
sorry.
take a division once it's been called for.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you,
A
Councillor
point of order
Quack.
for
I'm sorry.
clarification, Mr. Chairman, when somebody calls a point of order, a division after it's been put, is that valid? Because earlier you denied that.
I didn't hear it
Speaking to the
before.
point of order,
I
Mr.
didn't hear it-
Chairman.
I didn't hear it before.
Speaking to the point of order, a division can be called any time before or during the vote is being taken.
That's correct.
It was already just been,
But it was after.
it was after,
It was after the vote. Yes, it does.
just had the vote.
Vote hasn't
I think it was after Councillor Quack's, wasn't it?
Well,
So
We didn't declare the result of the vote, Mr. Chairman.
Mr Chairman, we didn't declare the result of the vote because it seemed too even, so
Okay, right, we will have a
I
division
think
then.
we should have a division.
Okay,
Councillor Clough,
no.
Councillor Collins,
Yes.
Councillor Cooper,
no.
Councillor Darby,
Against?
Councillor Filipaina,
Aye.
Mayor Goff,
No.
Councillor Hills, Member Henry,
Yep.
Councillor Hulse,
No.
Councillor Denise Lee,
No.
Councillor Mike Lee,
I
Councillor Quacks,
Yes.
Councillor Sayers,
For.
Councillor Simpson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Member Kake,
For.
Councillor John Walker. No. Councillor Wayne Walker,
Yes.
Councillor Watson.
Yes.
Carried.
Right, so that amendment has been carried 11 to 8, so we'll take that as a substantive which will be an A, all of A and not B. All those in favour?
No.
Against?
No.
It's carried. Okay, so there we are.
Can we make a note that it's in breach of the policy?
Oh, God.
Oh, boy.
It's called Roger politics.
Well, it is, isn't it? So I'm just
Diminution
asking,
of democracy.
I'm asking, Mr Chair, can we note that it's...
I think
It's just a fair question. It's a...
Parliament got it wrong.
Can we, and it's a question of you and the Secretariat, can we record that the resolution breaches the policy?
We wouldn't normally do something like that.
No.
It's inappropriate.
We could, but I'm asking that, it's been noted, I think, by the chair
Very
of
new
the
policy.
Appointments Committee and the deputy chair, whoever that
New
is.
policies you can breach, great.
Okay, we have one more report, folks, thank you, which we can just take in as read. Is there anyone who wishes to comment about the Finance and Performance Committee Information Report? Goodness me, there's an excellent summary of that.
Oh, we can't even get anything done.
Okay, moved by Member Coker, second by
To happen.
Hanari. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
That's what I call business.
Thank you.
Friday.
About them.